All right, council, is now 6:30, and we are going to call this city council this Tuesday, July 21st, regular city council meeting to order.
Recording in progress.
We are going to call this regular city council meeting to order for July 21. If the clerk would please call the roll.
Councilmember Amy Lamb. Here. Councilmember Roshino Farrell. Here. Mayor Josh Amato.
Here.
Councilmember Kent Treen.
Present.
Councilmember Michael Boyer.
Here.
Councilmember Pamela Stewart.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Debbie Treen.
She let me know that she will be joining online. We should expect to see her at some point soon. All right, Councilmember Treen, would you please lead us in the pledge?
States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilmember O'Farrell, will you please read the land acknowledgement statement?
We acknowledge that we are on the indigenous land of the Coast Salish peoples who have reserved treaty rights to this land, specifically the Snoqualmie Indian tribe. We thank these caretakers of this land who have lived and continue to live here since time immemorial.
Thank you very much. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Up next, we have public comment. I will call people up 3 in a row. If you are able, please line up behind the podium over there. You'll have 3 minutes. Please state your name and city of residence. At the 3-minute mark, I'll turn on my mic and try to start talking you down. We also have public hearings tonight. So if you would like to speak to the public hearing, I'd recommend not speaking during the public comment time and reserve your time for the public hearing. You can, of course, give 2 public comments, but if you would like it to be for the public hearing, please wait till that point. Up first, we have Amy McCumber, then Mary Wichter, and Jillian Wallace. It is on the mic.
Note over the top of it. Oh, hi. Okay. Hi, my name is Amy McComber, and I can pretty much assure you that you know what I'm here for. I just wanted to say that as time has gone on, this issue doesn't seem to be addressed or going away. And there have been a lot of things that I would like to make you aware of, one of which was there was an altercation with the person who has put up the blockage with somebody who was just simply driving their car over to the edge of it and then walking past it and going to their home and having lunch and then going back to work afterward. She lives on the other side of it. There was no reason why she couldn't do that. There's no reason. And he came out very belligerently and to the point where her husband had to get involved, and it was ugly and unnecessary. This is just, there's no reason for this to be blocked. This is not fair. With the Lake Road being closed and having cars be turned around, I happened to notice the other day, I was turned around unexpectedly. I was really grateful Gregory wasn't in the car with me, but as I came down Southeast H, which is the only way I could get home at that point, I noticed there were 20 cars backed up with no shoulder on either side. And if I'm with my son and I'm trying to get him home, that would be super problematic because that's a trigger for him. And when he's desperate, he needs to get home right away. And like I say, you know, I do know that this particular homeowner that has taken upon himself to block a road, he has like tried to rally the neighbors in his behalf and said, oh, it's going to be just terrible. Everyone's going to be driving down this road. And I'm sorry, I've lived there for 30 plus years and it's never been busy, ever. And there's no reason for it to become any different from that. The only reason why I would even use it is in an event of emergency or a blockage going on from another direction due to traffic or other reasons. So I guess, you know, at this point, I have a lot of people saying, oh, I saw you testifying at City Hall. How does that go? Well, still the same. And they say, well, why don't they listen to you? And I said, I don't know. Well, why are they even voted in then? Well, I don't know. Okay, so what are we going to do about this? Well, that's a really good question. And so then I talked to some other people who are employed here and other people, and they're like, I can't figure it out. I have no idea why this is okay and why people are turning their heads to it. So I'm really hoping that you understand that this is not just me trying to get a shortcut to my house. It's not me trying to make life miserable for anybody. It's a whole neighborhood that is shocked by this. So
Thank you for your
please
comments.
address this and fix this problem and
Thank
step
you.
up. Thank you.
Mary, then Julian, and then Swan Jacobson.
Hi, good evening. My name is Mary Wichter. I also live in Tamarack, and I am here talking about the road that needs to be unblocked, which is 210th Avenue, northeast to Northeast 6th Street. I've given you guys the map before. It's kind of the boomerang road. It is the north access to Tamarack, and we do have easement rights to it. There is a chain link fence with concreted posts that the city allowed that to get built since 2024, and it has a road closed sign even though there's no activity going on. The city owns this whole place here. In the last 24 hours, I took a picture. There's actually 2 cars that park here, and when they're a big truck, and when you do that, people can't turn around. If fire had to come through, it would be really bad. So I've been very grateful for Rachel Bianchi, who has had this, the new chief of police, Tim Meyer, come. He met with me today on site. So he's kind of understanding that we need to have a no parking anytime sign, but he wants to put it on the side where the people aren't parking. He needs to put it on the side that's home for the city. And I also learned at the coffee with the council coffee that a fire truck costs about $1 million to build and make, and it takes about 3 years to make. So we don't want those fire trucks to have to go fit through all these weird little things that they could get through on the road. It would reduce their time, or it would increase their time that they would respond with. And if someone's got cardiac arrest or stroke, you don't want to have that. So we don't want the fire trucks to have to really work. We need to deal with this issue, and it really needs to be opened. And I am going to speak. So there is an easement. The reason that we can do what we do is I'm over 60, and my parents hadn't even gotten married in 1959. This is from 1959. It's from the Hanson couple, and it says that they own property as the north half of Section 33 and the northeast quarter of Section 32, and that the parties desire to create a non-exclusive perpetual easement on and to said property for the benefit of said property and certain other properties or any part thereof. Now, it is therefore agreed that this paper, which is done in courier type, but it's recorded so it's legal, is hereby creates a non-exclusive perpetual easement for roadway and for egress and ingress and utility purposes. Sammamish Plateau Water has put water pipes in and sewer pipes in using these easements. And it's for these described properties. So it's the whole, it's not just here. This is Division 3 in Tamarack. They used to own this half too. So when they wrote the easement, like, would you ever want to buy land and not be able to get a road to it? And would you ever want to have that and not have utilities? So it was always with roadway and utility purposes, and ingress means going in and egress means going out. So I hope that you'll actually do something to get this handled. The city owns half the roadway, and they know it. They just don't want to act.
Jillian, then Swan, and then Holly Pratt.
Absolutely. Greetings, Jillian Wallace of the historic town of Inglewood, and tonight I would like to highlight some community events for those of you watching this evening. CERT classes coming up, teaching community emergency preparedness and disaster response skills in situations where first responders must be delayed or might know how to help with that next bomb cyclone. Community and neighborly assistance can be vital. So some friends will be joining me in the class, and we're already joking about zombie preparedness and marksmanship practice. So it'll be a fun group to participate with. Wednesday evenings, 6:30 to 9:30 at the Fire Station 82, running from September through November. And if I recall correctly, current grant funding supplies for this project will be used up after the session this autumn. We may not get another opportunity to take such a neat class, designed and particularly adapted for the residents of Sammamish. So I hope to see you all there. This coming Thursday is the July 23rd. Kindring is hosting their annual night out and silent auction at Winemakers Reserve in Woodinville. I'll be delivering the keynote speech and hope to see you there. Tickets are currently available, so thank you for supporting Kindring's programs, which are making early learning more inclusive and helping families navigate significant challenges. This Saturday, the 25th, I'll be rolling in the Redmond's Derby Day Parade with Little Bits Therapeutic Riding Center, celebrating Disability Pride Month with another phenomenal local community and their horses. We've also got Neighbors Night Out. The historic community of Inglewood will be celebrating, and it's always a good time when we get to block off a section of IBC's public streets to have a big potluck dinner and an outdoor movie. So thankfully, this year's topic of conversation is not centered around the battle of our public streets, but I do look forward to updating everyone on our sidewalk design process. Please enjoy the summer break from sessions of council and look forward to continued discussion of historic Inglewood's new sidewalks, requesting the addition of 2 blocks in length to the existing sidewalk gap plan to cover the more dangerous of the 2 blind turns. You know, the one where people continue to get bumped by cars at an alarming rate. We had one on Friday, and there's one on that was blocking the road on the way today. So who all got to see that one? The road is completely shut down, blinky lights and everything. It's terrible. So council, please demonstrate your resolve to eliminate the habit of too little, too late. This isn't just about Inglewood's historic plat and updated traffic management. This is about every person who uses our major arterial road and the lack of safety provided for bikers, pedestrians, school bus stops, and yes, even other cars. We request traffic and safety mitigation, please. Thank you for this opportunity to comment.
Thank you for your comments. Swan, then Holly, and Paul Stickney.
Hello, Swan Jacobson, resident of Sammamish. Hello, City Council, hello, City Manager. Here to speak today about one of the proposals on the agenda for today about adjusting the council meeting times. I appreciate the letter that the interim City Manager sent, and I do think a lot of the potential improvements do make sense. That being said, I am cautious about changing the meeting times that dramatically. The second Tuesday study sessions are often a very good opportunity for the council to go much more in-depth into topics than can be afforded during a regular session. And I'm not sure that 2 hours split across time between 2 meetings will be sufficient for those conversations. It's one of the things I appreciate about the study sessions is that time to go more in-depth. And I worry that that would be lacking. I also worry a little bit about meeting fatigue in the sense of meetings going very long. It adds an extra hour to the beginning of meetings without being likely to reduce the end time. And while that does mean there would only be 2 meetings during a month instead of 3, which is a little bit less meeting time, I worry that the extended duration of those meetings will make the ending portions of those meetings similarly, I don't want to say unproductive, but less productive, which they can be as people begin to get a little bit tired. So I don't want to outright say don't do this because I think it is worth considering, but please consider it thoughtfully and weigh the pros and cons instead of just jumping into it. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Holly, Hola, you're going to wait until the public hearing?
Yeah, I think I signed up under the wrong category.
Okay, we can certainly get you moved over there. Okay, then I have Paul Stickney next, and then Celia Wu.
Good evening, City Council. Paul Stickney, Sammamish. Last week, I introduced three pleasing terms, at least I think so: seaside, poolside, countryside. And there's another I talked about, city side, and that's what I'm going to talk about tonight. But first, let's talk a little bit about fiscal. There's a way to not need to pass the Metropolitan Parks Board and its cost to the taxpayers, and to lower the 11 million 6% utility tax and then abolish it over time, and to not need new revenue sources that burden taxpayers way less. The far larger issue of magnitude is to remedy city-side housing need imbalances, internal needs, and 5K market rate plus 2,000 affordable, which is in our comp plan, for states of life and generational housing need deficiencies is okay. Actualizing the 5K plus 2 for 7 over 20 years will net about 15 million a year in revenue to the city recurring, 200 million in one-time fees, 25,000 per household for those downsizing who want to stay in Sammamish, and some joy for those that have a fair amount of money and want to upside into housing other than single family. There'll be some high-end options, and there will be holistic added consequence benefits for the vast majority of elements that comprise the city across the board. Our 2000 regional growth target was under a third of our city regional share. Good. 7,000 from 2025 to 2024 is under 70% of the researched lowest city-side shortage housing needs. New car trips from students and students, from these 7K, less than a third of that of the homes that were built here from 1999 to 2022. Let's talk about a couple startling wake-up examples. 20% of our households are under 80% AMI income, 80% over. What if you took a 1,000-line budget and knew the numbers precisely for 20% and put the other 80% into one category? What if you did the same thing for 100 wetlands in Sammamish? The answer is you wouldn't. Then why is that happening for all economic, all demographic, and workforce city-side housing needs? It's time to gather the data, contrast the consequences, get enlightened opinions, and then add city-side market rate housing supply target numbers to the comp plan ASAP. I yield my 2 seconds.
Thank you for your comments. Celia, and then Aryan Sood.
Okay. Should I wait?
No, you can begin.
Okay. Good evening. Last time I showed you what the court in the Kimsey case actually ruled, that no judge ever found I violated anyone's constitutional rights. Tonight, I want to show you what happens when I try to correct Councilmember Stewart's false accusation, which has stood uncorrected for over a year. I have come to this podium 7 times with the court's own documents to set the record straight, and for bringing these documents, I have now been publicly accused of fabricating them. On April 28, 2026, a plaintiff in the Kimsey case, Catherine Freudenberg, publicly made 2 false claims about me. Ms. Freudenberg has blocked me, so I can't see or respond to her accusations, so I am responding here. First, she claimed that I am improperly using a sealed deposition from an employee of Archive Social. Second, that I self-created court records. Both are false, and the public records prove it. The document is not a deposition. It is not sealed. It is a sworn declaration from Archive Social Chief Operating Officer, the city's archiving vendor, concluding under oath that Sarah House Kimsey's comments were never deleted. It is publicly available on the federal docket. The court sealed one narrow thing, a vendor's proprietary software code. I have only ever cited the redacted public version. The court documents and exhibits I reference are not fabricated. They are authentic filings in a federal lawsuit. To say that a journalist fabricated federal court documents is an accusation of a serious crime. Ms. Freudenberg has also invoked a criminal statute carrying imprisonments of up to 10 years in reference to me. I did not let either claim stand unanswered. On June 29th, under Washington's correction statute, RCW 7.96, I sent a formal written demand by certified mail to Ms. Freudenberg, identifying both false statements and requesting their correction. No correction was issued. I have appended that demand to this comment, and it will live as a public record. I will document every public attempt to defame me, and I will pursue each one for correction. The council has now heard these false claims corrected 7 times, yet Councilmember Stewart still refuses to respond. I am asking for 2 words. I misspoke. The harm caused by Councilmember Stewart's false accusation has now been compounded by Catherine Freudenberg in a public forum, accusing me of a felony. I hope you understand why I continue to come back to ask that these false accusations be corrected. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you for your comments. Do we have anyone pre-registered for oh, I'm sorry. No, we still have Ariane Sood.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Aryan, and I'm a student at Eastlake High School. Over the past year, I've been developing a network of low-cost air quality monitoring systems with the goal of making air quality information more accessible at the community level. Like many cities across the region, Sammamish lacks its own air quality monitoring stations. Instead, it relies on data from surrounding cities. While residents can view regional air quality data online, those measurements often come from stations that are in different cities or from a handful of privately operated air quality sensors that can overestimate the air quality index or be delayed, hence not always presenting real-time local conditions. This gap becomes especially important during seasonal events like the wildfire season, when smoke conditions can vary significantly over short distances. To help address this, I designed a low-cost monitoring system that continuously measures particulate matter, including PM2.5 and PM10, which are some of the pollutants most associated with wildfire smoke and respiratory health. The system collects real-time environmental data and can be deployed in multiple locations throughout the city. By placing several of these monitors across Sammamish, we can begin building a more detailed picture of how air quality changes from one neighborhood to another. This doesn't replace current air quality tracking methods. Instead, it complements existing data by providing additional insight. Additionally, I plan to use machine learning to compare data collected by my systems with regional datasets from organizations such as the Washington Department of Health and NOAA. This will offer detailed air quality metrics without needing expensive equipment, help identify local pollution patterns, and recommend mitigation strategies that could help air quality in specific regions. As more monitors are developed, the data can help the city better understand local air quality patterns and identify areas where additional monitoring or future environmental initiatives may be most beneficial. As the network grows, it has the potential to become a valuable resource for residents, schools, researchers, local businesses, and city planners alike. I'd like to thank Ms. Rose Waker, Ms. Christy Santo Domingo, Ms. Julie Hahn from the Sammamish Chamber of Commerce, Mr. Adam Petruski from the Puget Sound Clean Air Agency, and everyone else who has supported this project and offered guidance throughout its development. I'm excited to continue improving the system and working with the community to make air quality information more accessible for everyone in Sammamish. Thank you for your time.
And thank you for your comments.
There's no online public comment this evening.
Okay, thank you very much. And with that, the council is going to recess into executive session. We're estimating it's going to take about 10 minutes, so we will return we'll return at 7:05. We're going to discuss pending litigation with legal counsel pursuant to RCW 42.30.110(1)(I). No final action will be taken during the executive session, and council does not anticipate taking action following the session. All right, we'll be back. Thank you. We are back a little early, but we do need to wait until 7:05 to begin. It is now 7:05 and the council has returned from executive session. Up next is our consent calendar. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Been moved and need a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent calendar. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Up next, we have our National Night Out proclamation. Councilmember Stewart, would you please read the proclamation?
Thank you. National Night Out 2026. Whereas National Night Out strengthens the relationship between neighbors and law enforcement while fostering a true sense of community. It provides a valuable opportunity for police officers and residents to come together in a positive, welcoming environment. And whereas on Tuesday, August 4th, 2026, neighborhoods throughout the city are invited to join thousands of communities across the nation in celebrating the 43rd annual National Night Out. And whereas the Sammamish Night Out, in conjunction with National Night Out, is designed to raise crime prevention awareness, encourage participation in local anti-crime efforts, strengthen neighborhood partnerships, and build community spirit. It also sends a clear message that our neighborhoods are united, organized, and committed to keeping our community safe. And whereas year after year, National Night Out has proven to be an enjoyable and effective way to strengthen the partnerships between law enforcement and the community that they proudly serve. Now, therefore, Josh Amato, as mayor of Sammamish, on behalf of the city council, proclaims August 4th, 2026 as National Night Out in the city of Sammamish and urges all citizens to participate in National Night Out by turning on all outside lights at 5 p.m. Tuesday, August 4th, a visible statement of neighborhood unity against crime.
All
And
right.
if I may add, there may be a little rivalry between, our folks in blue and the fire department. Every once in a while, they kind of come and try to have better toys. So it's always a good time.
All right, thank you very much. And with that, I'd like to invite Chief Meyer up to the front. The council, if we could please head over that direction and line up for a quick photo. Thank you. All right, we are now going to move on to a public hearing on the council-initiated code amendments and a staff-initiated comprehensive plan policy language amendment. Director Pyle is going to be giving us a presentation. Depending upon the setup of his presentation, he might pause to ask questions in the middle, or we might stop at the end. I'd ask the council for those questions to keep them to clarifying questions, and then we'll have a debate if there is a motion that is made after the public hearing. And then after David's presentation is done, that's when we'll open the public hearing and invite members of the public to come and speak to the related item. And so with that, David, whenever you're ready.
Great, thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor, Council. David Pyle, Department of Community Development. As was described, we are here this evening to hopefully take action on 2 council-initiated code amendments and also 1 comprehensive plan amendment that would be docketed for additional, I guess, finalization when we do our annual comprehensive plan amendment. So just a simple review here. At the July 7th City Council meeting, the City Council majority provided direction to not move forward with item 1. That leaves us with items 2 and 3 here. Item 2 being to reevaluate the list of exemptions to the city's inclusionary affordable housing program, SMC 2110, and to consider amending policy LU 10.4 in the land use element of the 2024 comprehensive plan to remove language related to PSRC's regional growth center designation. The purpose this evening, as was described by the mayor, is to provide final direction, conduct a public hearing, and deliberate and vote on an ordinance and resolution. I do want to note that there are 2 separate actions required to bring these items to closure. One is an ordinance, one is a resolution. A little bit of project history, as described in the agenda bill. This started back in February of this year, where we received direction to pursue several identified possible code changes. At that point, the staff brought these through the Planning Commission, received additional feedback from the City Council, and in the process identified another item that we bundled in, which was the comprehensive plan amendment related to the city's the language in the comprehensive plan to pursue designation as a regional growth center, which we felt was misplaced. So we added that to the list. That was added for review and consideration with the Planning Commission at part of their June 14th and 18th meetings. The Planning Commission made recommendation, forwarded that to the City Council, and just 2 weeks ago on July 7th, the City Council reviewed Planning Commission recommendations and gave final direction to the staff. Do want to note that there have been, since that meeting, several public comments received. Many of these are found in the Civic Web Document Center and in the agenda packet. There also were several that came through just yesterday and today from master builders, from the Realtors Association, and from several property owners and residents here in the city. So want to make sure that those are all considered as part of this final discussion. The first item is topic number 2, and this relates to the list of exemptions to the city's inclusionary affordable housing program. This is SMC 21.10.100. And the program itself today, as it stands, as it was adopted in December of 2024 and made effective on January 1 of 2025, requires that 10% of all new housing be affordable and provides options for how that requirement can be met, including payment of an in lieu fee for fractional units. So for example, if you were to be building a subdivision of 3 units, you could pay a fee in lieu on the square footage instead of building an affordable unit. It's comparable and it's designed to be comparable to a whole unit at a 10-unit construction project, if that makes sense. If you were a developer developing 10 units, you would be required to build one of those as affordable. If you're a developer building 4 units, there's a fraction, it's a 0.4 fraction, and the fee in lieu is designed to mimic the whole unit that would have been required at a 10-unit project. It's a tool within the toolkit for realizing affordable housing. I also want to take a minute to describe the benefits of this tool. So one of the things in the years I've worked here is understanding that the community really has an interest in seeing smaller, more diverse housing types be brought to market. And one of the challenges there is that the way land economics work, builders are continuously chasing larger and larger square footages in order to realize the profits that they need in order to make their business work. One of the biggest challenges is the raw land input and the cost of land that goes into the equation that they use to determine whether to proceed with the project. So when they're considering building smaller units versus building larger luxury homes, they tend to pursue larger luxury homes because the profit margins are higher. As a business, that is something they do. They pursue profit. That's part of it. Part of the fee in lieu program and the inclusionary affordable housing program and the exemption thresholds, part of that is really trying to disrupt land economics in a way that helps tip the builder to making a decision to build smaller, maybe middle housing type product instead of building large luxury homes. So we are using this tool in a way that helps us drive outcomes in a way that we haven't been able to use in the past. So it's not so much about our trying to get affordable housing. That is a big part of it. It is also about our really trying to change land economics in a way that results in builders favoring building smaller units. So when we're talking about this evening, I want to keep that in mind. It's not just about collecting a fee from a property owner or from someone trying to build a home. It really is about trying to add an additional factor that builders consider when building housing in the city that hopefully drives them to building smaller housing units that, as I understand it, are really truly needed in the community. So recapping on the July 7th meeting, we were given direction by majority to exempt involuntary reconstruction at any size. This is when someone's home is destroyed by a bomb cyclone or a fire or something. That is a point where they are in distress and really need a pass. These are very, very infrequent. There are some years where we don't even have one. There are some years where we might have one, some years like the bomb cyclone in the recent past where we had a few, unfortunately. And we want to make sure that those community members who are trying to rebuild their home have the flexibility to do so. And if it makes economic sense at that time to enlarge it, that they are doing it in a way that they feel they can achieve it without additional fee. The next was to exempt additions to existing units without restriction. This is a point of conversation that we continued with in the agenda bill. I did add a footnote here. Should there be some limit on additions, such as 20% of the size of the unit or 400 square feet, whichever is less? This is up to the council. This is a discretionary policy question item. We'll get back to that here in a minute. And finally, increasing the base exemption for rebuilds and new construction to 1,750 square feet. This one we received positive feedback on. We've heard from community members, master builders, realtors. We think this is really the place to be as we've continued to evaluate how to turn the dials or move the levers to get the right housing product we want as a community. We think this is where we need to be. So the first item that we need feedback on prior to moving to public hearing and hopefully getting to a motion is to clarify how the fee threshold is applied. For example, a project that exceeds 1,750, should it apply to only the area above 1,750, or is it applied to the entire floor area? The option one is the current practice. Once the project exceeds 1,750, the fee applies to the entire floor area. And the example here is a 4,000 square foot home would pay the fee on all 4,000 square feet. Option two, the fee applies only to the area above 1,750 square feet. The example here is a 4,000 square foot home would pay the fee on 2,250 square feet, as the first 1,750 would be exempted. Staff recommendation is to sustain program effectiveness is maintain current practice and collect the fee on total square footage when the project exceeds the unit size. And the concept here is, as discussed, this is used as a lever and is considered by builders when they're looking at what type of product to build. And if we were to shift it to apply to only those that square footage above 1750, it would diminish the effectiveness of that tool. That's not to say that builders would still consider it, but it would not be such a factor because the fee would be reduced, and they would likely just roll that into the luxury home production as opposed to it tipping them in favor of building a different product. So the way we see this is that if it was to be shifted to apply to only the square footage above 1750, is that it would dilute the program and dilute the effectiveness of that tool in getting a different housing product being brought to market. The next item is, should averaging of unit size be allowed for multiple units? The first option is the current practice of unit size is considered on a unit by unit basis. Any units less than 1750 would be exempt on a one by one basis. So if you had 6 units, all were under 1750, all 6 would be exempt. The second option is units can be averaged at 1750 to allow for diversity in unit production. That could result in a subdivision or a middle housing project that has a wide range of unit sizes. The example here is a project of 4 units equaling 1,200, 1,300, 1,500, and 3,000 would equal 1750, and the project would be exempt. Our recommendation is to diversify housing being built to allow for averaging of unit sizes to 1750. Another example, also looking at estimated sale prices, this would be a subdivision of 20 units broken into 4 categories of 1,000, 1,500, 2,000, and 2,500. And you can see here how this would result in a diverse range of housing types being brought to market. I also will say that this does result in diversity in some of our micro neighborhoods, that a development of 20 units that includes these different types of these sizes and housing types is actually a really great fit for Sammamish. There's quite a bit of architectural diversity, unit size diversity, and it allows for a mixture of homes as opposed to a traditional cookie cutter, basically build and repeat, where all the homes look the same and are the same size. The next item is, should the code updates be made retroactive? The initial direction that we got at the end of the meeting on July 7th was that we should at least consider making them retroactive for involuntary reconstruction. And in this case, the first option would be vested permit applications are subject to the rules in place at the time of complete application. That would be no vesting, that you are vested and it's not retroactive. Apologize for that. The second would be, as we discussed on July 7th, for involuntary reconstruction. And the third would be to retroactively adjust all projects to apply the new exemption thresholds. Our recommendation is to retroactively adjust for all projects. And this is based on feedback from the community, and it's our evaluation of projects that we've received. It wouldn't be terribly complicated from an administrative perspective to do the bookkeeping and find those projects and change conditions. I do note that most projects have not paid the fee yet. You are allowed to defer it to the point of final inspection. So it would simply be changing a condition on those permits and eliminating that fee that would have to be paid prior to final inspection, if you qualified for the exemptions that the council finally decides to adopt, hopefully tonight. Reminder, the Planning Commission made a recommendation that is a little different than where the council currently stands on these issues. The Planning Commission did agree on both ends of the bookends, both bookends, with involuntary reconstruction and with setting the new construction and production construction threshold at 1750. However, the commission did spend a lot of time trying to find the right fit for how to address home additions, and how to address tear downs and rebuilds, and how to address construction of single home on vacant lot. And where they landed is you would be exempt up to 3,000 square feet in those instances, and anything above that would then trigger a payment on the balance. So for them, it was payment on the entire square footage if you exceeded the 1750 for production housing, but for a remodel, addition or for a tear down, reconstruction, enlargement, or for a new construction on vacant lot, they proposed that you would have to pay the fee on anything above 3,000 square feet. The other item, which would be the resolution that you'd be considering this evening, as described, is amending the city's 2024 comprehensive plan land use policy 10.4 to eliminate reference to pursue PSRC regional growth center designation. My understanding is the council's in alignment on this one. Admittedly, this is an error in the 500-page document when we finally brought it forward. This is an important one, but one that admittedly we missed. So apologies for that. The good news is we're docketed to correct that, and here we are correcting it. I do note that, I do note that there are other references to this in the comprehensive plan. However, when reading those, our finding is that these are not actionable items. These are simply repeats of county-wide policies. So our removal of it would not remove it from the county-wide planning policies, and these are simply parroting those policies within our code, or within our comprehensive plan. So our finding is that it wouldn't really achieve anything to change this because it wouldn't change the CPPs. However, we are committed to continue to look for these if we do see them and bring them forward, and want to make sure that if they are found, that they are corrected quickly. So with that, I hand it back to the mayor, and happy to answer any questions.
Okay, at this point, council, please light up your mic if you'd like to speak, but please if we can, keep the comments or keep this time to questions related to this. If you want to potentially adjust policy after the public hearing, ask questions that would help you with amendments, but let's keep that part to after the public hearing. Councilmember Stewart.
Yeah, thank you, David. A couple of questions. First of all, on the how we apply the fee, do we only apply it to what's above the threshold or to the whole square footage? Can you explain a little bit more about why just having a fee on whatever's above the threshold would not be effective? Because last we spoke, we said, well, you would charge more per square foot than the current fee, but you would only apply it on what's above it. Why do you feel that one is a more effective tool than the other?
So I guess there's an either or, right? I would say that if you were to adjust the fee to reflect that, so first of all, the fee, again, as I stated before, is modeled after replicating 1 in 10, right? So you would have to build one affordable unit in a 10-unit production, and the fee is calibrated to account for a square footage alternative. So if you were to only count it or apply it above 1750, it would not be consistent with how the fee was calculated in the first place, because the fee is calculated consistent with a 1 in 10 unit assumption. I hope that makes some sense.
Sort of.
Yeah. Well,
I get the 1 in 10. I just don't understand how. Yeah.
Our program is 10% of all new housing is 80% AMI or lower, right? Mm-hmm. And when you start to break that down, you can't really apply 10% to fractional units, right? So when we worked with Arch and with Arch's consultant to develop an alternative, which would be an inclusionary affordable housing in lieu fee, mm-hmm. which was designed to address the fractional units, it was modeled on 10%, so 1 in 10. So if you were building a townhome development of 10 units, one of those would have to be affordable at 80% AMI. So when they input all of the economic factors into that to calculate out what the fee would be, it is based on the premise of 10%. Mm-hmm. So if we are now exempting 1750, it disrupts the assumptions behind that, because you are now giving a pass on 1750, and it disrupts the whole model. I don't know if that makes sense. It's the math is different when
Okay.
you allow for an exception on 1750.
So what you're saying is if we wanted to do the only charging a fee above the exemption, we'd have to come up with a different way to calculate the per square foot fee.
Right, and you might need to, in my mind, it's kind of like changing the percentage to 9%.
We'd have to get into the math for that, but.
My point
yeah.
is that you're giving a pass to small projects.
That's the idea, right? If it's below 1750, they get a pass. That's the idea.
Well, what I'm saying is if a small project's meaning a 4-unit subdivision building luxury homes
Right.
versus a 10-unit subdivision building luxury homes, the 4-unit project is going to get a pass.
Oh, because it's not about affordability, it's only about square foot.
On the 1750.
Okay. Do other cities do it with only charging the fee above the exemption number?
It's unclear reading their codes.
Okay.
My understanding is a few new codes that are coming out, Kirkland's, for example, which is not yet effective, they do it on everything above 2,000 square feet.
Okay.
So that is one that I can speak confidently about. It's a policy decision. And from my perspective, what would happen is we would have to, in order to continue to pursue smaller, more diverse market affordable housing, not necessarily deep affordable housing, but market affordable housing by way of square footage. It's true that, if I go back to this slide here and you look at the price ranges based on square footages, smaller square foot homes are more affordable.
Well, they're less expensive.
We'll say less expensive, right? But those also represent starter home opportunities.
Yeah.
Those represent filling a different need in our community. So if we eliminated that first 1750 and gave builders a pass on that and only collected above that, it would remove that component from their broker's assessment of what the different options were. And I've sat with brokers and they've showed me their software and they've showed me how the modeling works. And I've seen where they put in the affordable housing fee and I've seen the output on the other end, and it is compelling how it impacts their decision making.
Okay.
For me, if we're really trying to get smaller units built in the city, that is a really important tool for us to continue to work with.
And what is Arch's take on having fee in lieu for additions? Do they think we should? Do they think we should have any kind of a limitation on additions at all to try to maintain existing affordable housing stock?
That is a complex question, right? So on the one hand, we do have as a policy in our comprehensive plan that we are working to retain existing housing stock, right? It doesn't say specifically to not see it enlarged. It just says to retain it, right? Now, if we add a fee on additions, it would likely deter large additions. And that's what the Planning Commission was discussing at length.
Again, like we give people the ability to do a reasonable accommodation, but just not an unlimited accommodation.
Right. However, I also note that some of the commentary that we received as part of this process is very well articulated and very compelling. That we have a large group here in this community that are in the middle, and because they have their homes and were able to get certain mortgage rates, are able to live in the community, but they can't expand their home because they can't afford to pay the fee. Yet at the same time, their life needs are changing, their families are growing, and they do need to find a way to provide the space that are needed. Whether it's a child that moves back home, as I hear is now a trend, after college or something and needs to live at home, that they want to be able to have that flexibility with their residents to accommodate that, but yet at the same time, they can't sell their residence and buy another one because they are really trapped by that mortgage rate and by home prices. Which is where we come up with our recommendation is to not is to not charge a fee on any home addition of any size, because we have noted that it is a major pain point at the permit center when people are applying for permit applications. We've seen people cancel permit applications when they finally realize the fee, and we have been very upfront, we feel, about this, and it is in the details, in the notes. Some people haven't seen the details, and when they do finally see it, they are fairly upset with us.
Okay, I've been given the nod that my time is up, so thank you.
Mine too, I'm sorry.
Nope. Thank you very much. Councilmember Boyer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. David, could you go back to the first, the one we've just been talking about, where there's your recommendation is to collect the fee on the total.
Sorry, just a second.
Right? I think that was it.
This one right here.
Yeah, collect a fee on the total. Does that now match? So if you go to the graphic, I'm going to ask you, look at this. Now go to the graphic where we have, not that one, the other one. No, where maybe it was one before. The one where a home remodel at the 17, that it's all exempt. Is that the one? Yeah, full exempt. Yeah, there you go. There you go. Does that comport with this? Does this, is your staff recommendation not matching this?
Our staff recommendation does match this, that a home addition be fully exempt.
Oh, got it. But if you had what I'm thinking about is that, let's say you had the multiple, we're having exempt to 1750 for multiples, and tear down and rebuilds exempt up to 1750. So your recommendations, do they match what we see on the screen?
Yes.
Okay.
And the reason for that is that the point where you're tearing down and rebuilding, plus building new on vacant or multiplying with development, is the point where you can actively make decisions in design.
Yeah.
And I want to point out that when you're making decisions in design, you can design your home in a way that is forward compatible with future life cycle needs and can achieve, you could build, for example, a 3-story, 1,500 square foot house that's 4,500 square feet and build it essentially as a triplex where the units communicate with each other, use it as a single family home. But over time, as you age out, your family needs change, you could move into just one of those floors and rent the other 2. Or you could move out of the entire thing, rent it as 3 different units, or you could rent it as 1 unit. It is very flexible in how you can use it, and that is a type of housing stock that we as a city really want to see built.
Thank you.
Councilmember Lamb.
Thank you. How many affordable units have we built in the last 2 years, David?
I don't have that number offhand. However, it is not a lot. I think it is somewhere with Brownstones West, and they're just coming to market. I want to say 5 units.
Okay. All right. And on the King County Housing Dashboard, I noticed that since 2019, we've built 0. So since 2019, we've built 3. Okay. And that really compares to Redmond, who has built 1,000 since then, and Issaquah, who's built 100-ish. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, I do not see any other lights on. Okay, so we can now go into our public hearing. All right, with that, I'm going to open the public hearing for the council-initiated code amendments and a staff-initiated comprehensive plan policy language. Do we have our signing? And let's see. Holly, we can start with you if you would like. Did you sign up for this? Is this someone you'd like to speak to? Yeah, if you'd like to. Yeah, we've got, I believe it is 3 minutes for public comment during this section. Okay, so we'll start with Holly.
Thank you.
And then Paul Stickney and James Eastman.
My situation is that we have a house that's 2,700 square feet. And our daughter came to us and asked us if we would want them to, at some point, move in, and as we aged, kind of help us through our aging. And after about 2 years of planning, we are in the stage of just starting to the addition. The addition is 600 square feet. And so, and it's attached to the house. After waiting almost 5 months for the permits to be approved, we get an email from the city, and they say, your permits are going to be approved. Here are your fees. And tacked on to other fees that we had already paid, but we still needed to pay, was a fee for $20,000. And for this exact project that you've been talking about. And it hit us really hard because we didn't see it coming. We weren't informed that there was going to be a fee like that. And we're considered seniors, and the money for the new build is been put together through savings and a loan and stuff like that, but the $20,000 took a good chunk out of it. The wording from the permit department was, here's your fees have been approved. I mean, the city fee is this. In other words, you pay the fees and you get the permits. So we had to, on that day, which was June 20th, we had to scramble to pull $20,000 together in order to pay on that day in order to get our permits. And I don't think it was fair that we didn't know this was coming, that we weren't told about this fee. And I also feel that we're kind of helping the city out by bringing two families together under one roof. And we know our taxes are going to go up, which are going to help the city. It also, I think, one thing that should be taken into consideration is the age of the owner and how much money you're taking away from older people that have lived in this community and supported. We've been here 34 years, and we have supported this community, and we're trying to continue supporting this company.
Thank you for your comments. I'm sorry, your time is up. We only have 3 minutes available.
So that's all I have to say. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much for coming tonight. We have Paul, and then James, and Jim Wagner.
Excuse me, Mayor. Paul has pre-registered and is now online.
Okay, can we come back to Paul?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Also to note, there are others in the room that signed up on the incorrect sheets, so if we can at the end call other people up as well.
We will certainly get that all sorted out. James, and then Jim Wagner, and that's it on my list, so then we'll work on the rest.
James Eastman, East Lake Sammamish Parkway. Yeah, as we talk about this, repeatedly talk about disrupting land economics and knobs and dials. And I think David did, maybe one of the other meetings, use the example of Highcroft and how for a while we had homes being forced on small lots, 3 stories straight up. And to disrupt land economics, we did our development regulations updates. And since then, we haven't got that same density on such small lots, but we have gotten bigger homes on bigger lots. So the supply has diminished because we did disrupt land economics by that change. But I think I agree with David, as we spoke before, when you go to bigger custom homes, builders especially can afford to do those when you have tree regulation, storm retention, setbacks. You have all these things that you got to fit in, and not clearing and grading until you go actually build the house, import, export, all limited to actually when you go build a home. I mean, it's not efficient at all. So that becomes your primary market, and Sammamish can afford that. So since those development regulations updates, that's all we've gotten, and land is slowly diminishing. And as a landowner, I look at this and I say to myself, is anything going to change? And I warned it wasn't going to change a year and a half ago because the basis for this all was that you're increasing the value of people's property by allowing them to build 3 on a lot, but there's still all those items we got to address. But this whole averaging like that could be a game changer. And that could actually disrupt economics. And I believe the builders brought that to David. And me, just as an outsider with land and going through that all, it's like, okay, now I can do this here. Okay, I can put this here. I can do this here and have it all fit. And it's like, wow, that could really work. And, you know, get away from building even bigger houses on bigger lots to using whatever remaining land we have to have diverse housing. And then another thing, I think, you know, I've repeatedly said and emailed it, but, you know, the whole basis for the 1,500 square foot middle housing allotment was to align, or for a cottage house was to align with this exact fee, but we're changing this fee to $1,750, but for some reason we're keeping cottage houses limited to $1,500. So I'd like to see that go up to $1,750. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Jim Wagner.
I agree with the concept of the inclusionary housing program and that they're appropriate for new development projects. As he just said, they were designed for new development projects. The ordinance was adopted to increase affordable housing opportunities and as Sammamish accommodates development growth and should be focused on those new developments. I purchased a house 10 years ago. It's 73 years old. I'm 72 years old. 1,400 square foot Rambler. In the process, I've realized I'd hoped to remodel it because it's 73 years old, 2x4 construction, leaking foundation walls that if I'm going to have an efficient house, I'm going to have to rebuild completely. I get notices from PGE that my house is one of the least efficient in the area. The expansion of an existing homeowner-occupied home does not contribute to the residential growth in the same manner as new housing development. And applying that fee to upgrades of existing homes extends the ordinance beyond its intended purpose. Cities should encourage homeowners to modernize aging homes to improve safety and energy efficiency, accommodate multi-generational families, and accommodate aging in place. These large fees will discourage these investments. Penalizing home improvements undermines other important public policy goals and may reduce investment in existing neighborhoods. As an example, as a result of this fee, I won't be putting in solar panels. Developers can factor these fees into land acquisition and pricing. I'm surrounded by other houses. I have no options in that regard. A homeowner enlarging a residence is improving an already existing home for personal use. It's not generating new housing inventory or acting as a commercial developer. We can't avoid those fees or pass them on. And the homeowner will be paying higher property taxes in perpetuity as a result. Affordable housing obligations should be linked to new housing projects only. Imposing that fee on existing homeowner-occupied home improvements discourages reinvestment in existing neighborhoods and shifts growth management obligation intended for new development on individual homeowners who are simply trying to improve their primary residence. The fee effectively becomes an additional tax on homeowners seeking to accommodate a growing family, adding accessible space, caring for aging parents, aging in place, or just modernizing an older home. These improvements often provide public benefits by allowing residents to remain in their communities longer. Homeowners already contribute substantially through permit fees, sales tax on the construction, and increased assessed value on the property. This inclusionary fee becomes an additional burden on residents who have already made long-term investments in the community.
Thank you for
I'm
your
asking
comments.
the council to create exemptions to appropriately address these issues.
Thank you. I know we have Jason Danforth in the audience. If anyone else would like to give public testimony here, if you'd like to line up behind the audience, if you are not signed up on this sheet, I would appreciate it. Or line up behind the podium. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, council members, and city staff. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Jason Danforth. I'm here in full support of the amendments to the Inclusionary Affordable Housing Program exemptions under SMC 2110. So my family has proudly called Sammamish home for over 18 years, since purchasing our first home in the Laurels neighborhood. This is where we've raised our children, built lasting friendships, and chose to invest in our future. We're incredibly grateful to call Sammamish our home. In November 2024, we happened to be one of those cases where 2 large trees fell onto our garage during the Bob cyclone, completely destroying it. After nearly an entire year working through insurance complications, we're finally able to move forward with the rebuild and obtaining our permit. Then on the day our permit was ready to be issued, we unexpectedly received an invoice for more than $38,000 for the affordable housing fee. We had no indication that this fee was coming. After more than a year after recovering from the storm, dealing with the insurance complications, that unexpected cost created a tremendous financial burden at a point where we had no realistic option but to move forward. When we learned this issue was on the council's agenda earlier this month, July 7th, we attended the entire meeting. I want to sincerely thank the council for the thoughtful and collaborative discussion. It really made us proud to be residents of Sammamish. One theme especially resonated with us. While affordable housing is an important priority, so is maintaining affordability for the families who already call Sammamish home. These proposed exemptions recognize that involuntary rebuilds, homeowner additions, and remodels are fundamentally different from new residential development. They help existing residents continue to invest in and remain in our community. I believe these amendments strike an important balance between supporting future housing needs and helping current residents remain in Sammamish. I respectfully encourage the council to apply these exemptions consistently to all qualifying projects, regardless of timing, so homeowners who meet adopted criteria are treated fairly and the intent of these amendments is fully realized. So basically what David presented as option 3 and what has been recommended by the city staff. So these aren't easy policy decisions. I really commend the council, the planning commission, and the city staff for thoroughly addressing this complex issue. Thank you for your leadership, your consideration, and the opportunity to speak this evening.
Thank you for your comments. Mary Wichter.
Hi, Mary Wichter, Sammamish for 25 years. I'll be brief. I did attend most of the planning commission meetings. There was a lot of good discussion that went on. There were a lot of times focused around that 3,000 square foot house that everyone had to be. And I know that our Angel, one of the city staff, had said she lives in Redmond and she lives in a 1,500 square foot 3-story townhouse and it's fine for 5 people. So I think Sammamish just isn't used to having the smaller homes. And I know a lot of older people that live here would like to have that 1,000 square foot cottage type home. And I haven't seen anything in the code until the averaging thing came up that would incent somebody to do because if they do 1,000, 1,000, 1,000, 1,000, they can still build one giant home or whatever they have for their lot. So it occurred to me on the math that that is one of the ways I think we could get cottage housing in the city and people would actually build it. And there are areas I can think of the city where those could be built, but they also are on septic, so I don't know how that works. You have to have a lot of land for the septics. But anyway, I was hoping that somebody, and I think James Eastman did, I think he was speaking for the averaging because it helps the builder economics. But if you really want to see the 1,000 square foot homes built, the only thing that I've seen in the last couple of months is the averaging thing. So in that sense, I would be for if it seems like it makes the economics work. Thanks.
Thank you for your comments. Would anyone else in the audience like to give public comment? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to pre-registered comments online.
We have one online pre-registered public commenter. One moment while I promote them. Mr. Stickney, when you're ready.
Hello, City Council. Paul Stickney Sammamish. Had to come home to take care of some stuff and watch the meeting. Got a little bit of a shotgun approach on some topics that I sent in today, but a couple others that I've thought about, and not to throw flies in the ointments, but a couple of interesting thoughts. Here's one of them off the bat. So if 1750 becomes the base exemption, and let's say someone builds a 100 unit condominium or apartment building in town center, where all the units are under 1750, then there's no 10% e-inclusionary, right? At 80% AMI, or is that a different thing? I don't know that's wrong or right. I'm not trying to raise an interesting, and then a second issue, I've said this a couple times at Planning Commission meetings, but I think the city should really do a vote or a advisory vote from the residents about a affordable levy or bond to see whether there's agreement that the city as a whole would contribute. I agree with charging new construction. I agree with missing middle when there's creation of new units, but we've had over 1,300 unit affordable housing target in past comp plans that haven't been met, and that's a huge deficiency, and that falls on prior development. So that's an interesting issue. Another issue is on the quasi-judicial issue. I had been advocating to not have a 50% critical area number because it's arbitrary, and in my view, it doesn't pass a nexus of fairness or proportionality, especially with all the regulations in Sammamish today. The amount of net yield is far lower than it was 10 years ago cumulatively. So I asked just a sample question. Pretend somebody has 30% non-critical areas. If this passes at 50, then they can't talk about an upzone. What's the harm in upzoning the 30% to a higher density because the 70% is totally covered? And then another interesting question. If this stays at 50%, but that same person that has a 30% non-critical area, can they go for a annual docket and ask to update the zoning?
Thank you, Paul. Your time is up.
Okay.
We don't have you on this. We don't have the timer on the screen there.
Okay, no problem.
All right.
Okay, anyway, that's the last question. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Nobody else online?
That's all for online public comment.
All right. Then with that, I will close the public hearing and ask if there is a motion any council member would like to make. Councilmember Stewart.
I have a few more questions based on some of that comment, if that's acceptable at this point.
Yes.
Okay, great. A couple of things. One, I heard that cottage housing is still at 1,500 square feet. Is that true? I don't think I saw that.
And that's aligned for a different reason. That's aligned more with the state definition and regional definitions. And we did bring that forward as a code amendment earlier this year. And we did increase it up to 1,500.
So should we be looking at making it all consistent, or is there a reason to have cottage housing be separate?
It was not aligned at 1,500 because of the affordable in lieu fee. That's part of it. However, and it did nicely align with 1,500. However, that is really based on other parameters.
Okay. And then the other one is, it's my understanding that this fee in lieu only applies to developments under 10 units. Is that correct? So the example of an apartment building, the affordable housing 10% would still apply, correct?
Correct. However, if you were building, say, 35 units, it would apply to the fraction above 30.
Right. But okay. But it would still, you'd have 3 affordable units, and then it would be on the remaining 5, you'd have to do this part.
Correct.
Okay, but we wouldn't have the example of an apartment or condo building all at 1750 and not have to build any affordable.
Right. I do also want to point out that this does not apply in the town center. The town center has its own affordable housing requirements, and those were considered for update as part of the town center update process, which we're going to be bringing to the Planning Commission on Thursday for a renewed conversation.
Okay.
And we would have to update those separately from this. So this does not apply in the town center.
Okay, and then if we did have any kind of guardrails on additions, but giving plenty of space, right, to give plenty of headroom, if we did do that, would the intent be that it would only be on the square footage that's above the exemption? Or again, are you looking to say it would be apply to everything? Because I feel like it should only be on what's above the exempt number.
You could make that as a middle ground, compromise, that for additions, you only pay it on the new square footage. And that's something if you had.
Or you could even say you could do an addition up to 20%, and anything over 20%, you would pay a fee.
That is only on the new square footage.
Only on the above 20%.
If you made that motion and had 3 friends, then that's something that, whatever the council's direction is on this, we are ready to implement it.
Okay, and would you have to go back and calculate that fee then? Would there be more work to do there? Because it wouldn't be on the total square footage?
It's not new construction.
Right.
Right? So I think it's a little different out the gate.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, David. Appreciate it.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. My review of all of this, I think you've been very comprehensive, listened to us, put together amendments that are reasonable and still meet our affordable housing requirements and recognize builders' requests and residents' requests. So I would like to move to adopt the amendments to SMC 2110-100 exemptions as presented in Exhibit 1 and amended to allow for averaging of unit sizes to determine exemption eligibility, and further amended to make exemption threshold changes retroactive to all permit applications.
All right, thank you. There's been a motion, which is the one at the top of the list here. Is there a second?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Deputy Mayor, would you like to speak to your motion?
Well, I kind of did, but I just think that we've sent this back and forth, and we've got a lot of individual homeowners who are trapped in a very expensive ordinance that isn't really helping with affordable housing. And in fact, in some cases, it'll probably force people to move away and sell to a developer, which isn't really what we want to do. I don't think we want to keep our existing seniors and those who've invested their savings in homes here and enjoy living in our community. We want to keep them. So allowing them to be able to make those improvements to their house that make them livable as they move through their stages of life is important. So that's why I support this.
Councilmember Lamb.
Can you show what action number 2 is? I just want to be clear.
Is related to the comprehensive plan.
Okay. So I think the decisions that we make here is going to be very consequential. I think you mentioned that the intent of, or rather the intent of the legislature when they made those middle housing laws, like they wanted to disrupt land use, in a lot of what they did. So, and I do believe that I don't agree with allowing exemptions for additions. I disagree with that because that will impact the future. The GMA explicitly states to encourage the preservation of existing housing stock, and our own comprehensive plan in our housing elements, Housing Element 4.5, preservation of existing low-cost rental and ownership housing, Goal number 5.1, promote the preservation of existing housing, which may provide for affordable forms of rental and ownership housing. So fully exempting additions allow people to make additions to gradually increase the size of their homes overall for Sammamish. And we all know that 56% of our housing stock is 4 bedrooms plus. I understand that aging in place is really important. I fully support the allowance of the 20% up to 400 square feet. 400 square feet allows for, in what I've read, an additional bedroom and a bathroom, which is really what you need for aging in place. And features beyond that for aging in place are really things such as wider doors, zero-step entry, curbless showers, levers on doors. So that has nothing to do with square footage. So you can reasonably age in place and add 400 square foot, and that would accommodate a lot of people that would want to do that. It would accommodate an extra bedroom for a child that's coming home to live. What I have a really hard time with the exemption is that there is a fair, this totally, it favors homeowners. And I said this last time when this came. It favors people who already have equity in their home, and it penalizes renters who live in Sammamish who want to buy a house. It penalizes young families who can't afford to live here, because right now there's only 5 homes that are under $1 million here in Sammamish, and what we're doing here is only going to exacerbate the problem of larger homes. It's not that, I appreciate the people, the residents that have given comment today. I don't support this because of just the housing inequity right here. We are allowing homeowners to increase the wealth gap. We all know the problems with an increasing wealth gap, and it doesn't allow renters, it doesn't allow young families to build generational wealth. So I am not in support of allowing the exemptions on unlimited size exemptions for additions.
Councilmember Boyer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. David, could you show us Exhibit 1?
Yes, bear with me for 1 sec. Sure. Have to stop share. So Exhibit 1 is the ordinance, and Attachment A to Exhibit 1 is the code.
Got it. So the reason I'm asking is I want to make sure I'm clear on what we're voting on. So I believe Deputy Mayor moved for what the staff recommendation was, correct?
Correct.
And then can you contrast that to gosh, I'm going to make you jump back to the other motion where we had option 1. I want to know the contrast between Exhibit 1 and that option 1. Are they the same? So I know what we're voting on. Yes. So what's in Exhibit 1 is that staff recommendation. Is that what I'm reading there?
Exhibit 1 is the code package that was brought forward, plus averaging of unit sizes and making it retroactive to all permits.
And so option one, does that then extend 1750? What's the difference between option one?
Yeah. So option one is yes on averaging, which is consistent with the staff recommendation.
Got it.
Yes on retroactive, consistent with the staff recommendation.
Got it.
But it moves to be only collecting on fees, only collecting fees above 1750, as opposed to collecting on the entire square footage.
And that's different than option one?
That is different than option one.
What does option one do?
Option one includes our collection on all fees. So basically, go back to this slide here. Great question. I appreciate it. Just bear with me. I apologize if my navigation is a little slow. This is it right here. The difference is the current practice versus the other alternative, right? So if you were looking at that alternative motion, it would be what is listed as option two here. The fee applies only to the area above 1750. The example of a 4,000 square foot residence is you would pay the fee only on 2250. So under this down here, as that alternative motion is yes above 1750 basically means if you're building a 4,000 square foot home, you would only be paying the fee on 2250 as opposed to all 4,000, which is the way it currently works today.
Your staff recommendation would be to pay on all 4,000.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Councilmember Stewart.
Yeah, David, so just to clarify, I know Michael just asked this. So this motion is to pay the fee only above 1750.
No.
No, this motion is for all of it.
The motion is for all of it, correct.
Okay.
This is splitting the difference. So on the one hand, you're not collecting on home additions, but on the other hand, for tear down, reconstruction, enlargement, or new construction on vacant or production housing, you are charging it on the full square footage if the unit exceeds 4,000 square feet.
1750.
Or 1750, sorry. However, you're allowing averaging.
Yes.
Right?
Okay.
So
Okay. I would like to, I move that we amend this motion to add, for additions that anything that you can add an addition. If your home is 1750 or below, you can have a 20% addition, and that 20% is exempt, and anything above that 20% would have a fee. And then for above 1750, you can add 10% addition that would be exempt, and anything above that 10% would have a fee. So in other words, for additions, for 1,750 square foot homes and below, you can exempt a 20% addition. And for homes above 1,750 square feet, you can exempt a 10% addition. And again, you would only pay the fee above those exemptions.
Second.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second, and what I'm going to ask is if the council can be at ease for a few moments. Councilmember Stewart, can you please work with David to have that written up and displayed for the council so we can understand exactly what you're...
Sure.
Thank you. That would make it very clear for us during this conversation.
hold on a sec here. Let me get this up.
Oh, come on, David.
You got this. I'm just waiting for it here. So
I see that. We need the Jeopardy music.
this is a little bit extreme here,
Mary,
but
that was really good. And while he's putting that up, can I go ahead and speak to it?
Okay, thank you everyone for working with us through that. This is a complex topic, and I wanted to make sure that Councilmember Stewart's motion was properly vocalized, so there was no confusion on the back end when we went through and voted on this. And if you'd like to speak to your motion, please do so.
No, that was a great suggestion, Mr. Mayor. And first, I just want to thank all of the community members who've contributed both tonight and in the past. This is a very complex topic, and we are trying to thread a number of needles. And I just want you to know that I am very sympathetic and care very deeply about being able to allow people to stay. This will significantly reduce any fees that anyone would have to pay by putting an exemption on. So you'd be able to add your exemption. We can certainly consider tweaking the amount for homes above 1,750 square feet. I think we are trying to find that sweet spot of being able to allow people to make those additions of an ADA bathroom and an ADA bedroom, or being able to add a bedroom and expand, a kitchen or an eating area, but also try at the same time to discourage going too big so that we can try to maintain some of our existing housing stock, which is really critical. And often, sometimes the most affordable housing in an area is the existing housing, as it is so challenging to build new. So I appreciate that we can have some further discussion and debate on this, and hopefully we can land in a place that strikes a balance and does not make additions unaffordable, does not hit people too hard, but continues to put some downward pressure on housing size. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Councilmember O'Farrell, you were next up, but are you speaking to this amendment? No. Okay, I don't see any lights on right now for Councilmember Treen.
Thanks. I'd like to speak to the amendment, please.
Yes, go for it.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. So yeah, I won't. I think the best thing for the city is to remove the fee in lieu altogether. So with that being said, I would not be supporting a more complicated fee in lieu structure and program than what has been recommended by staff. So I will not be supporting the motion, the amendment to the motion. Thank you.
Councilmember O'Farrell, your light's on is okay.
Well, yeah, I would just want to say I concur with Councilmember Treen. I won't be supporting this motion. I support all aspects of the original motion. I would also, I liked that slide, David, that we had. It was like the amended slide that came from Planning Commission. It really does concern me when our residents come to us and say, hey, I have these plans, I want to stay here, I want to improve my home, and I want my kids to come live with me, or whatever the situation might be. And I think we should do everything we can to allow that to happen. Because I'm very concerned about how the cost of living these days, everybody is perpetually squeezed by one thing or another. I think the fee in lieu is a great idea, and I think it should be large builders, large developers who should be paying that fee, not our individual homeowners. I also don't think we should be telling people what's a reasonable extension and what isn't. Some people might want to add 4,000 square feet to their home, and that might suit their needs. But what if you need 600 square feet, like we had somebody come and tell us today? I think you should be allowed to do that and not have to pay a huge price for that. So I would not be supporting this. So there you are.
Okay, so no other lights are on for this round, so I'll go ahead and speak to this. I also will not be supporting this amendment. I appreciate the thought behind it and the goal here, but I think simplicity is very important on this front. And the other element that I find problematic here is it's impacting directly the people who already call Sammamish home and want to continue to call Sammamish home. I think the main motion is the way to go. I won't be supporting the amendment. Councilmember Lamb.
So I agree with this amendment. I think this is a fair balance between allowing people to add an addition without allowing additional and more homes to be built larger and pricing people out. I believe that people that rent here are residents. I believe that people that work here and can afford to live here but want to live here, such as our teachers, the majority of which commute from other cities, they are part of our community. It is not just people that live in a home. I think it is deeply unfortunate that we are not taking and complying with what the state actually wants us to do, which is to preserve our existing homes. Thank you.
Councilmember Stewart.
Yeah, David, what is the per square foot fee?
$34.45.
Okay, so just for some context, the fees would be infinitely smaller. So for this first one, for example, you would be able to go up to 2,100 square feet. So if you added 600 square feet to your 1,750 square foot home, you would only be paying that fee on 200 square feet. So you'd be paying, I'd say, 35, say, dollars times 200, right? So what's that? $7,000. So it's going to significantly reduce those fees. I would hope that as a council we could discuss sort of, again, the dials and not just shutting this down. Maybe maybe for those that are above 1,750 could be a higher percentage or something like that. But I still think we want to encourage the keeping of them small. But no, I don't want anyone getting a $20,000 or a $38,000 fee. That's not the intention here. So I'm hoping that we can continue to have that discussion and strike the right balance to make the allowances for those who call Sammamish home, but make sure that we don't have someone coming in, buying up small homes and just making them bigger and turning around and selling them, which is what I'm afraid of, right? It's not that I want to penalize people who live here. It's that I've seen what has happened in Bellevue and Redmond and all the other cities where we don't have a lot of vacant land, so what we're going to mostly see is people coming in and buying up the existing homes and doing that kind of flipping. And I want to make sure that we are keeping those affordable for people to move into who already live here. So I'm hoping to strike that balance. Thank you.
All right, we don't have any other lights on, so with that, what we will be doing is voting on the motion as the amendment to the motion as presented on the screen here. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, sorry.
Opposed? Nay. Motion fails 2-5. Okay, and with that, we are going back to the main motion. The lights up here, Councilmember Boyer.
Yeah, I move that we approve, I think it's option 2 or option 1. David, I want to make sure I
Isn't that already on the floor?
So to clarify, we've got a motion on the floor already, so it sounds like Councilmember Boyer is looking to amend the main motion to take in some adjustments from option 2. So if you
correct.
Okay.
Yes. In other words,
yes, please.
Yeah, it's the that center section around above 1750 is what I'm looking for, because I think the rest of it matches. It's just that for the section where it's not a extension or an addition, but it's the rebuild and such up to that where it's 17, you have an allowance of 1750, it's a payment over that. And then the rest makes sense as far as the original motion. Thank you.
Okay, so let's work on the language here. So your motion is to amend the main motion to tack on the language and further amended such that the inclusionary affordable housing in lieu fee applies only to conditioned floor area above 1750 square feet. Okay.
If I understand what that one says.
Okay,
I'm following that.
Okay, is there a second to that?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to amend the main motion to add in and further amended to such that the inclusionary affordable housing in lieu fee applies only to conditioned floor area above 1750 square feet.
In essence, supplant the staff recommended motion with option 1.
Yes.
Yes, that's effectively what it does here. Yeah. Okay. Councilmember Boyer, would you like to speak to your motion?
No, thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Stewart.
Yeah, I would support this as long as we clarify that we have to calculate a new fee, because the $34 a square foot would not have the same effect here. So we would need a new fee structure along with that. Is that part of your intention, Councilmember Boyer? So you wanted to keep it the same? Okay, well then I won't be supporting this, because that would make the fee not even material. So it would do nothing to dissuade anyone from building a larger home.
Deputy Mayor.
I was just going to clarify that I understand now what is on the floor, and that would be we would exempt remodels or what am I thinking of? Additions. We would exempt additions still and not have a limit on how much could be added. we would, everything would be the same as your recommended, except it would only apply to square footage above 1750.
That's correct.
Yeah,
So the average is already there.
Still include the averaging, and it would just not, it would not collect the full fee. It would collect it only on amounts over 1750. Okay, I got to noodle that a little bit.
I don't see any other lights on, so I will speak to this. I've gone back and forth on this. I've seen what some people have emailed in on this topic. I understand the reason why we would want to have that cliff in place at 1750. At the same time, going to 1800 or 1900 isn't far outside of the goal of what we're trying to do. And this can always be amended later to adjust the fee or to add it back in. I also go on the other side of this, and people who are building 3,000 square foot homes, the price is such that the additional cost of paying the fee in lieu is not going to preclude them from buying the home. And we do need the money to help support affordable housing. This one is very tough, and I kind of lean towards the idea that we can go a little bit slower on this, see what's working, and then adjust it later to be able to collect more of a fee. Because what we're doing now is fixing something that went too far too fast. And what this does, what Councilmember Boyer's amendment does, will let us slow down, and we can come back to this next year and adjust it. So I think I'm going to be supporting, I'll be supporting this amendment. Councilmember Treen.
Yeah, simplicity seems to be my word of the day. So I'm just going to say that this makes it a little more complicated, at least from what I understood. Councilmember Stewart and Mr. Pyle here were talking about. So, but thanks, Josh, or Mayor Josh, because that was actually well stated that if I get to look at this again next year, and then maybe the council will see that it really isn't helping us at all accomplish the goal that we want, and so we could get rid of it all in its entirety. That'd be awesome. So I could support this motion if we get to look at it again in a year. Thank you very much for your time.
Councilmember O'Farrell.
So just a quick question. So the motion that's on the floor, that would mean then we have to go back and recalculate the fee in lieu formula.
That's not how I understand the motion.
That's
It would simply exempt anything, any square footage under 1750. So if you were building a new 3,000 square foot home, you'd only pay the fee on 1250.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Councilmember Stewart.
Yeah, so if the goal is really to try to build 1,750 square foot homes or smaller, if I built a 2,000 square foot home, right, I would only pay a little over $8,000. So it's not really, in terms of building a new home, that's not really material. It's not going to discourage a developer from doing anything. So I feel like this is a haphazard, it's a good intention. I do agree that it would be better to only charge the fee above the exempted amount, but it would have to be an adjusted fee so that it was still a discouragement of going over 1750. And again, this is just for new construction. This is not for additions. This is just for new construction. So I feel like, again, the current fee, as you explained, was calculated assuming it would be on the entirety of the square footage. It was never intended to be the fee if it was only above the exempted amount. And so the fees, for the most part, will be small enough that they're not going to dissuade anything. If anything, they're going to potentially push them even bigger because they'll say, well, if we're going to pay a little bit more, we might as well just build it even nicer. And so we'll make it even more expensive to absorb those fees as opposed to keep it under that amount. So I I can't support it as is, but I'd certainly be willing to. Actually, maybe that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to propose an amendment to the amendment, which is that we only charge the fee above the $1,750 exempted amount for new construction, but we recalculate the fee to adjust for that change in how the fee is applied.
Second.
And then to speak to that, again, I like the simplicity. I think it's actually more discouraging to charge the fee only on the amount above because I get the exempted amount at $1,750. If I want to go a little bit bigger, I can, but if I'm going to go anything more than a few square feet, it's going to be a huge fee. So I potentially could support that. Although I hear, David, what you were saying before is that the wisdom is that you create a bigger cliff, and that's what really drives the change in behavior from the builders. But I will still propose that since I think that there is support for this new way of calculating. But I think we need a fee that is designed with this in mind. The existing fee was not designed for this. And again, if you're going to do it based on economics, the math has to support it. Thank you.
Councilmember O'Farrell.
So if we have to go back with this new amended motion on the floor, if we have to go back and recalculate the fee, does that mean then we have to go back to Arch and redo that all over again?
There would be two ways to do that. One is to really try to find a way to interpolate it, if that's the right word. The other would be to actually go back to Arch, renew the consultant contract, open up the model, and adjust the inputs in that to account for this. Some might see it, there's different ways to see this. Some might see it as simply just adjusting it as if you were charging for the full $1,750 in the first place. So it just really depends on how you look at this. I see this from the bigger picture of the entire housing system that we have built. And that's where I come at it from the angle of that if we exempt up to $1,750 from looking at it from operating a housing program, it diminishes that tool that is used as a stick to get someone to build a smaller unit.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, I do not see any other lights on, so we will be voting on the amendment to the amendment, which is to recalculate the affordable housing fee to account for the exemption threshold at $1,750.
Correct.
Okay. All those in favor of the amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay.
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 Motion fails 2-5. Okay, we are back to the amendment of the motion, which is effectively written out there as option number 1 on the screen. Is there further discussion on that one? I think, Deputy Mayor.
Aren't we back to the motion, the amendment that Councilmember
Boyers.
Boyer put forward?
Correct,
right?
yes.
So I want to speak to, it isn't what I would recommend, to be honest, but I want to speak to the statement that $8,600 is not a big deal on building a new house. 250 square feet is an average bedroom. So I feel like when you're building a house, I know we have tried to build an ADU, so we have a little experience with the total costs around these projects. They're massive, and $8,600 is a lot. That buys you a full session, full design from an architect, and that's a big cost. So I do think that it is still at least somewhat of a deterrent to have to pay $8,600 just to add a bedroom, or you're not adding a bedroom, but just to make a house that's that much bigger, that would have one extra bedroom. So, and of course, the bigger it gets, the more that dollar increases. I do recognize, I do believe that it's not the right thing to do, but I can live with moving that forward and looking at it over the next, I wouldn't go a whole year, the next 6 months, see how that fee is working out and whether we are whether we are actually influencing building in the city. So I would support it.
Okay, Councilmember Stewart.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate that all of this is premised on economic modeling. And we just took something that housing experts worked on to come up with an economic model, and we just completely changed how we're going to apply it, so we might as well have just had a monkey throw a dart at a wall on a fee amount. And I just don't think that that's good policy making. I think there has to be some methodology behind how the fee is calculated. And I support the idea of changing, like having an exemption threshold, but then you have to recalculate the fee amount. Otherwise, it's completely random. This is just a completely random number, and there's no reason for us to believe it will work. It's just a random fee that we're applying. And I feel that we know this, and by approving this it just feels like very bad policy making. And if this was something that was desired, we could have asked, for something to have been calculated prior to coming forward. I just don't think applying random fees is an appropriate. We've no reason to believe this will work, right? There's no methodology behind this fee amount. Thanks.
I do not see any other lights on, so at this point, Councilmember Lamb.
So I agree with Councilmember Stewart. ARCH is the housing experts, and here we are trying to undo what experts have figured out. So I, would fully support ARCH relooking at these numbers.
Councilmember Tree.
So we're not undoing anything. We're not monkeys. We're not making bad decisions. And yes, we understand the economics that are going on in the world today. All right. And we know that what the developers are going to get out of this is a reprieve. What they're also going to do is build houses. So you have said, or others have said, my opponents and others on this council and the public, that we have a housing crisis. So the whole idea here is to build houses. They'll build houses.
Okay, and with that, we will vote on the amendment to the motion, which is shown there in option 1. All those in favor of the amendment, please say aye.
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 Opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries 5-2. And with that, we will move on to approving the main motion as amendment, which is effectively option 1. Okay, all those in favor of the motion as amended, please
Hold
say.
on, I'd like to speak to it if we can.
For Stewart?
Unfortunately, I was fully supportive of the staff recommendations. This is not what staff recommended, and I'd like to see us be able to move forward, but I think this is a big one, and I think we need to really try to get it right and not be so random. So unfortunately, I can't support this with this amendment and a random fee assigned. But I want us to be able to provide the exemption to our residents and retroactively do that. But we shouldn't be doing mathematical equations and fee calculations on the dais. Thank you.
Okay, and just a quick reminder on debates among the council, please address the chair and not other council members. Councilmember Boyer.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor. So what are you leading us to right now?
At this moment, we are going to be voting on the main motion as amended, which would include it's option 1 as presented here on the screen.
Thank you.
All right, we will now vote on the main motion as amended. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries 5-2.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, I just want to inform you of one additional step that we're going to be required to take here, and that is we'll be bringing this back for a final vote on the language included in a packet, and talking to the city attorney, I'm made aware that when we're adding some additional language here, we do have to bring it back again for one final approval. So we'll bring this back. The hearing's closed. To be sure, the public hearing is closed. To be sure, we've received final direction. And to be sure, it will be simply replicating this vote again on August 18th. I won't be here. It'll be Evan Fisher. So please be nice to him. And hopefully this will be simply a vote at that point in time.
If I may, Mayor and Council, I just want to further explain this need for basically a final housekeeping approval, because Exhibit 1, which is the ordinance in your packet, Section 3, for example, talks about retroactivity of exemption only for units involuntarily reconstructed. And the motion that was approved by majority is going to allow retroactivity for all of the permits. And so, for example, to me, that's a substantive edit. That goes beyond correction of a scrivener's error. And so that's why I was talking to Director Pyle about the need to bring this back on the 18th, just to capture an ordinance that is consistent with the motion that was approved by majority of council tonight. Thank you.
Thank you for that explanation, and David for working with us through that.
Resolution. Item number 2, resolution.
Okay. The resolution of the same. Great. Okay, on to you.
So the second step here this evening would be your consideration of a resolution that would effectively move this comprehensive plan amendment into the city's annual comprehensive plan process. So there would be an additional public hearing held when we finally close the door on that annual comprehensive plan update. Remember that we only update the comprehensive plan once a year. So we have to collect all of those edits by way of resolution, at which time we bring them forward for your consideration for final adoption through an ordinance. It would be at the end of the year. So the recommendation here is to pass a resolution to remove, to edit policy LU 10.4 to eliminate reference to the term regional growth center as previously presented here in there it is right there. This shows how it would be edited. Turn it back over to you, and then there's a recommended motion here.
Thank you very much. Deputy Mayor.
This is something that I stumbled upon a year ago, maybe, something like that, and from the beginning questioned its applicability to the city of Sammamish. So I am happy to move this resolution amending land use policy 10.4 to remove any reference to regional growth centers as recommended by staff.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Deputy Mayor, would you like to speak to your motion?
The countywide planning policies that establish this idea of a regional growth center has criteria for where regional growth centers should be located, and Sammamish does not meet those criteria. It's possible that 20 years from now we will, who knows, but to put that in our plan as a goal right now does not make any sense.
Councilmember Stewart.
Yeah, as David mentioned earlier, this was supposed to be removed previously. We had discussed this prior to approving the comp plan, so I'm glad to see it getting removed because that was never direction given from the council to the staff to include this in here. And I concur with the Deputy Mayor that Sammamish does not meet the criteria for a regional growth center. So thank you.
Okay, and I want to apologize. I should have clarified the motion before we continued on, but David, was the motion as said meet what you need in order to execute against what you've effectively written here?
Yes, it does. And this is not something we'll have to bring back because we are not making any edits at the dais here. So we would simply be passing the resolution. You would see this again at the end of the year when we do bring back the bundle of final amendments to the comprehensive plan that we're allowed to do once a year.
Okay, thank you. I do not see any other lights on. So with that, we will vote on the motion. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you. And with that, I'll move to the second agenda item that our Community Development Department has this evening. Bear with me while I transition to another presentation. Great. So again, David, for the record, David Pyle, Department of Community Development Director. I'm here this evening to round out our work on updating Sammamish Municipal Code Title 24A, which is the section of code that governs how our comprehensive plan and our development regulations are updated. The objectives of this evening are to answer any final questions you might have, hold a public hearing, and ideally deliberate and pass an ordinance amending this section of code. Since you last met, there have been some very modest changes made, mostly in response to comments received from council members. The first was clarifying that sub-area plans and neighborhood center plans may be created or updated in any year as long as they follow the requirements of Title 24A. This is as allowed under the Growth Management Act and how we can amend our comprehensive plan. The next is related to annual docket procedures, waiving of docket request fees and application fees for council or commission initiated docket requests. It might be complex to understand how a council would pay for those, so it really makes sense to waive that, given that those are representatives that are voted in or appointed by the community. Again, we did some housekeeping, moving some subsections around and numbering in collaboration with our city attorney in review of this code section to clean it up. We also corrected some of the language regarding how you add a docket request to an existing work plan. And we included language regarding outstanding amendment proposals under legislative review of amendment proposals. So that is all accounted for in the matrix of changes. I really want to commend staff in working through this. I think that this packet and agenda bill is very clear, and I really appreciated the way in which they presented the amendments in the matrix so you can clearly track what was changed after each meeting and see how it progressed. I think it's a good model for us to use going forward. So again, reminder that the annual docket deadline is coming up. Per the language in the packet this evening, it closes on August 3rd at 5 p.m. Just want to put a plug in on that to the community. So if you have a docket request you want to submit, go ahead and get that in. And with that, I'll turn it over to the mayor if there are any questions, and if you wanted to hold the public hearing and deliberate on this is one I think we could close out fairly quickly.
Thank you very much, council. Any questions? I have one question related to the fees. I just want to clarify that this is only for the council and commission. It's not for individual members of the bodies. It's for the bodies as an entity.
That's correct.
Okay. All right. And with that, we are going, council, no questions? Okay. And with that, we are going to open a public hearing to consider adopting updates to Title 24A of the Sammamish Municipal Code. And the public comment sheet is on its way up. Did anyone register online for this one? Paul is online. Okay. All right, first up we have James Eastman.
James Eastman, East Lake Sammamish Parkway. I've successfully, made it through the docket process and am now waiting, which is no easy feat, but whether or not it actually ever moves any further than that, other than just on a list somewhere with I think I paid $9,000 to the city that's just sitting in an account somewhere. For this, knowing that it could go, I think Mary's had one go 7 or 8 years and it's just hasn't gone anywhere. Most of them don't go anywhere. I think the Santonia rezone is the only one I've ever heard of that has gone somewhere. But I appreciate the process for a citizen to, this is the only way to look at a zoning change for a citizen, unless you guys bring it forward. And so essentially that's what my docket request does is looks for a zoning change, and it's just to create a new neighborhood center zoning for the area. I mean, it's not even defined. There's nowhere in the code that even talks about it. It's basically offering to sit down with you guys on a 100-acre blank slate and look at what would be a good fit for the city. Unfortunately, it's been 2 years and nobody's taken me up on that. And I don't know if in the near future, if that'll ever happen. Hopefully it will. But that really is up to you guys. If, it'd be nice to know what you're looking for, what your goals are, what your needs and wants are, and maybe we can fit that all in. I know definitely my site has plenty of beauty to offer, has plenty of city pipes that are letting out onto the hillside that cause all sorts of erosion, picking up sediment, taking it to the lake. So there's all sorts of improvements that can be made for environmental changes to stop that, and also establish trails, corridors, just a nice master plan community. I think a lot of that's been prevented by me being in line behind Town Center, either you guys being for it or against it, and that's gone on for years. So I'm asking you guys to change how you operate, really, with your goals, to look outside of the Town Center agenda, to let other things move forward at the same time. So, as far as this goes, like, we spent a lot of time, changing this, but, to me, it's irrelevant, because even if you get through it, like, the chances of even going forward are very slim. So hopefully I'll break through that wall. But yeah, don't let people just drop off after 5 years or whatever. If that's still in here, I don't know if it is, but don't just keep them on if they want to be on forever. Maybe things will change. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else in the audience like to give public comment related to this? All right, Mary.
I'm Mary Wichter, Sammamish, frequent flyer for dockets. So I think it's important to, when you talk about the docket process, to understand that the city is required to have a docket process so that you can make inputs and changes. Otherwise, just stuff has to float into the work plan by some magic and actually get done, which some things that are really important don't do that. So the process was Title 24, which became Title 24A, and I wanted to give a big shout out to Miriam Leitner and Jackie Belial, who did a ton of work on this. They did an incredible job taking input, having good discussions, finding errors, and then fixing things, and then seeing the repercussions from those. So just super job, David's group, and all the people involved. And the feedback needs to come from the people who use it. And the city actually, like when they did the comprehensive plan, they had to do a docket themselves so that they could bring forward changes that do that. So the city follows it and people follow it. So even though 24A doesn't have a lot of glory and shine to it, it's very essential. So the problems are, I've had a transfer of development rights where you would stop developing on those landslide hazard areas and you'd put some units in Town Center or other centers. That was passed in 2019 and still sitting there. There is a septic to sewer conversion program, which I am told maybe actually will come up fourth quarter this year, and that also passed many years ago. The problem is when you get a docket, because if it doesn't align with the work plan, they need to do it, and you can get gaps, so you get dropped, and that's why I keep coming back. I was like, why are you doing this for 10 years? Well, that's how long it takes to actually get stuff done, or maybe not get done. So it's important that we don't drop that. So there was good discussion about what do you do with the stuff that's been going on the conveyor belt but hasn't gotten off? So I did not read the version for this meeting, but there were so many changes before. I just wanted to be thankful for what we have. You do have to use a docket process. People can do it. Developers can use it. An individual person can use it. And the city has to use it. And it's really been streamlined. They did a lot of work on it. The Planning Commission did a ton. And just, again, thanks to staff for all that we did. So I hope that my dockets will actually come forward. Transfer of development rights would actually be a way you could give people, like they'd buy lands that shouldn't develop, and then in Town Center or other centers they could get more units that are smaller that they could build if we could do that instead of just saying, no, we have to wait and wait and wait and wait. So my hope is that that will come live to fruition before my hair goes entirely gray or I die. And I'll yield the remainder of my time. Thanks for all the work.
Thank you for your comments. And we'll move to pre-registered online public comment.
If you've pre-registered and would like to provide online public comment, please raise your hand. I'm promoting Mr. Stickney. Paul, when you're ready.
Hello, City Council. Paul Stickney. I just wanted to talk a little bit to the docket revisions in general. There is a lot of good things that happened in this third iteration that I've seen, and Mary was at the other two also. There was one in 16 or 17 and then one in 2019. And I'm putting forward a personal preference that I think is correct, and I want to turn an example around so you can feel this a little bit, and I can piggyback a bit on what James Eastman said. Two parts of the docket being simple: to decide if something's going to get on a docket or not is the first part. That should be done carefully and thoughtfully. But if something gets on, it should get moved forward a little bit quicker, not just gotten on to linger. And I'm going to use land use examples rather than text amendment examples because there's not that much cost to those. But on the land use amendments that come up, there's can be some not only substantial costs for filling out the application, but reports and studies and staff time and back and forth and so on and something. And what gives me real heartburn is this, and I want to talk about it. There's language in the packet that talks about that if there's no decision or if the docket isn't moved forward in 5 years, then and no longer aligns with city council priorities, it could be dropped. I say no. At the Planning Commission, I came up with something strong that I really didn't expect to work, which was that if there's no answer in 5 years, it's automatically approved. And I'm not trying to force anything here. What I'm trying to push is this. If someone gets on the docket, spends the money, wants to get an answer, there are three major things. There's research and staff time, which is paid for by the person who, does the docket. There's Planning Commission review and public inputs and recommendation. There's City Council review, input, and recommendation. Even if policies change, no one really knows exactly what that whole arrangement of data is going to yield. And the person who asked and got approved should have the right to go through that process and get an outcome. So there's a full legislative investigation, research, discussion, input, and a vote. It shouldn't be able to just be removed on what I call a whim by a change in political leaning. If it gets on there, it should have a process to go through to a official outcome.
Thank you for your comments, Paul.
And that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else online?
That's all for online comment.
All right, and with that, we'll close the public hearing. Is there any council member who'd like to, Councilmember Stewart?
Yeah, I move to approve the ordinance amending Title 24A of the Sammamish Municipal Code as drafted in Exhibit 1 of the July 21, 2026 Agenda Bill.
Second.
And I'll speak to it in that I think what Mary said and others, staff has done a great job. Thank you for being so thorough, and hopefully we can get this closed.
All right, thank you. Any other council member? All right, seeing none, we will now vote on the motion as presented on the screen here. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you, council. Have a good evening.
Well, David, thank you for all you've done here, and also to the Planning Commission, working with them and all the work that they did. I know we did not go with their exact recommendation, but I want them to know that I'm sure all of us, if not most of us, did review many of their meetings to help inform us in the questions they asked, and their thoughts really helped form our thoughts as we're coming up here. So thank you very much, Planning Commission and the staff who worked with them through that long, arduous process. We really appreciate that it brought what we think is a good product. forward.
make sure to convey that to them at our Thursday Planning Commission meeting.
Thank you very much. And if there are no objections, I think it might be good for us to take a 5-minute recess. No objections. The council will recess for 5 minutes. We will come back by 9:10. Council, we have 1 minute until we resume. Council, it's now 9:10. We need to resume our council meeting. If you could please make your way to the dais.
I hear you, but I think it's legality.
All right, here we are back from recess. We are now moving on to new business. We are going to have Mark Baird present the contract with WBCP for the permanent city manager search.
Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and council members. Mark Baird, Admin Services Director. As the mayor said, I'm here this evening to present the contract for consultant services to recruit and hire a permanent city manager. The city put out an RFP and received a number of responses. Council reviewed all of the responses, and the council subcommittee scored and selected WBCP. The city and the firm put together a contract. Council had the opportunity to review the contract, and the final contract is before you this evening. Staff recommend a motion to direct the interim city manager to execute this agreement. Thank you. Mr. Mayor, I'll turn it back to you.
All right, thank you. Would any council member, does any council member have any questions or like to make a motion? All right, I can make a motion asking the interim city manager to execute the contract with WBCP as presented in the agenda bill. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. I'll speak to this. Thank you, everybody, for the work you did in reviewing all of the proposals. Received a lot, and I think it's important that we move forward with haste to hire our next city manager and encourage everyone to vote in favor of this contract so we can get moving. Would anyone else like to speak to this? Deputy Mayor.
I would just like to thank Mark for his work on gathering all this information for us as well. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councilmember Lamb.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank Mark for being in our subcommittee meeting and addressing some of the edits that I wanted to make in the contract. So thank you.
Okay, I see no other council member questions. So with that, we will vote on the motion to direct the interim city manager to execute the contract as presented with WBCP. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we will now be moving on to the Southeast 6th Street Improvements Phase A project updates. give our team a moment to get settled here.
Thank you. I appreciate your patience. I'm realizing I have too many things up here. Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and City Council. For the record, I'm Audrey Starcy, the Director of Public Works. I am joined this evening by Lei Wu, our City Engineer and Assistant Director, and we're here this evening to provide you with a quick update for Southeast 6th Street project improvements. Apologize about that. And we will be back to council in August, where we will ask council in August to take action. One with a right-of-way dedication, which Lei will touch on later in the presentation, as well as we are hoping to have a contract, a consultant contract award for consideration in August. It does say September in the agenda packet. We are working really hard on the administrative side of things to be able to push that contract through sooner so we can have 2 more weeks of really great construction weather. So just a quick overview of the project and what city goals it does align with. And then, like I said, I'll hand it over to Lei, who will walk through some of the project details and where we are with the project today. This is all previewed in your packets. If you do find yourself at this, both in the agenda packet and in the presentation, these are all links to our website where all these plans are stored on our website. But this project is included in and aligns with all of the adopted city plans before you on this slide, including our transportation master plan and comprehensive plan and our stormwater and transportation improvement plans that were later incorporated into the city's citywide CIP or capital improvement plans. And of course, this project is included in our 2025 and 2026 budget. A little bit of timeline. At the very top of your slide, you'll find the kind of different phases that an asset goes through and most projects that develop assets go through. So beginning with the planning phase, moving forward to design, construction, and maintenance, you'll find those design, that kind of bright royal blue box, and construction is the orange box. Those are the quickest phases, probably the most fun if you ask Public Works. But our maintenance and rehabilitation and planning phases take the longest. So this actually, work began, as you know, in 2008 with the town center plan, and of course was incorporated into the transportation master plan. I won't go through all of these because I just did, but as you can see, these things take time as we are planning for infrastructure that we are investing in for our community. Towards the bottom half of your slide, you'll kind of see the timelines for the development agreement that is associated with this project as well. In terms of project location, this is located in the town center. The Southeast 6th Street is on the northern boundary of Lower Sammamish Commons Park and the southern boundary of 2 in development parcels right now, Brownstones East and Brownstones West. So a little bit of a close-up image for this. The northern half of the street was constructed by developers that developed Brownstones East and Brownstones West between 222nd Place Southeast and 224th Avenue Southeast. The city is building the southern half of the road. It's our frontage, and we're very excited to be building this hopefully very soon, in about a month. The development agreement is linked in the agenda packet, but primarily there was an original development agreement, and then there was a first amended and second amended and restated development agreement. This exhibit here, shown on the bottom right hand of your screen, is from the 2025 second amendment to the development agreement, which really focuses on moving the road center line to the property line. It also outlines who is building and designing what, including the stormwater system design. Just a few community benefits for this. The image on the left is from the Exhibit B from the 2022 development agreement, and the concept plan shown on the bottom right of your screen is from 2025. You can see here the differences in the site planning that occurred between those 2 development agreements, including a regional consolidated stormwater vault, as well as parallel parking that's available 24/7 to the public, and reduced impervious surface. Perhaps the biggest benefit is this truly creates cohesive community design. It's a legacy project. We are building something for the community for years and years to come. We're very excited about this project. Leigh will go through the details of how many lineal feet this will be providing, how many benches, et cetera, this will be providing. But it's a wonderful project. And the DA also further outlines some of the community benefits in terms of reduction of overall impervious surface, pollution-generated impervious surface, et cetera. Before I hand it over to Leigh, are there any questions on this first half of the presentation?
It does not look like it.
Thank you, Audrey. Yeah, so completing this street aims to bring the lower Sammamish Commons Park as part of town center instead of apart from it. Excuse me. The existing parking area, including parking spaces and driving out, will be where the street is. This street is a key link in implementing vision of town center as amended in 2020. A vibrant, urban, family-friendly gathering place in a healthy natural setting. It's eminently walkable. So in addition to multimodal facilities on the street, enabling the creation of people place, there will be reduced impervious surface, and we are leveraging the existing rain gardens. For the northern half, the developers have completed the street construction except a couple of minor items. One is the landscape, and then the other is minor punch list items pending inspection. So they just completed striping. Pictures on this slide shows the view looking west from 224th of the northern half. Pictures on this slide shows the view looking east from 222nd, and then the other one on the right is on the raised crosswalk. Yeah, there are 3 rain gardens connected with each other, as shown in the image at the bottom right. Runoff will collect from Southeast 6th Street and then flow into the rain garden on the western side. Depending on the rainfall events, runoff will flow into the second or third rain garden. Plants in rain gardens will will soak some of the runoff. Mulch at the bottom of rain gardens will filter runoff and releases it into native soil and recharge groundwater. In addition, this natural process also helps to remove some of the pollutants from runoff. In case of extreme rainfall events, overflow will run down the slope in the park along an existing underground pipe into a dispersion trench. Then water will dissipate to nearby vegetated areas. So the team overcame quite some design challenges in order to leverage the use of those existing rain gardens. We're very happy that this approach is a go. We have completed final design. Right now, we're in the process of accepting construction bids by 1 p.m. On August 6th. After bid opens, the team will evaluate bids and determine the lowest responsive and responsible bidder. By that time, we will provide a construction cost to council. So the upper graphics is for 30% design. There are some design changes, but the footprint remains the same. You might be able to discern that the age of existing parking places overlaps with the age of the sidewalk to be built. So essentially, the existing parking area will be replaced by one travel lane, angled parking spaces, and the sidewalk. So the lower graphics represents final design. Gray area includes travel lane, parking spaces. Large yellow area indicates sidewalks. There are three small yellow rectangles. They are benches. And bike racks will be installed toward the eastern limit of the street. Green indicates landscaped areas, including ground cover, different species of trees, and shrubs. Rain gardens are south of the landscaped area. So in addition, there will be ADA curb ramps leading either to crosswalks or ADA parking spaces. The sidewalk will be lit by pedestrian lights in addition to street lights. One thing to highlight is that sidewalk will be 10 feet, the same width as the travel lane. By prioritizing space for pedestrians, we're creating a street that can help people to connect or gather. Everything works together to create such an environment. The wide sidewalk, pedestrian lights, frequent crosswalks, landscape areas right next to a wonderful park, and also the rain gardens. Walking or lingering will feel comfortable. So essentially, the parking area will be replaced with the street, travel lane, sidewalk, and angled parking space. The rain gardens will still collect runoff instead of from the parking area for the park. This time in the future, very soon, from the street. So we recommend formalizing the intended use of land. We recommend council would adopt a resolution in August 18th for us to dedicate right-of-way from parks to public works. And this is also clarifying long-term maintenance responsibilities. Rain gardens will retain the same function, look, and feel. So this project has two sources of funding. One is from Transportation Capital Fund, 340. It's a little bit under $2 million. This project is 100% transportation impact fee eligible. That means growth pays for growth, transportation-wise, completely. And the other source is Stormwater Capital Fund, 438. It's about $640,000. The total budget is $2.55 million. In terms of project costs or expenses, the design is slightly under $400,000. The estimated construction cost is $1,234,000. We estimate construction management to be about $200,000. So the estimated total project cost right now is $1.83 million, about $700,000 under budget, but we'll know a more realistic construction total project cost when bids come in and after we have done bid evaluation. So we'll provide the updated project costs, including construction costs, to council in August. Okay, so Audrey talked about those next steps already. And then, so the engineer of record estimates that the total working days needed for this project is 35 days. So if if the weather is fair for construction, we expect substantial completion in November. However, if we have an early fall, when the temperature will be lower and the weather would be wetter for some construction activities such as asphalt paving, we will have to pause some of the construction activities. In that case, we'll set the street up for opening to the public, and we'll have construction complete around next spring. So that's our update.
All right, thank you. Is council any questions? Councilmember Boyer.
Yeah, I don't want this to be too tangential, but you know how you've got 6 going to 224th? I can't remember. It's going to extend east of there at some time, at some point?
At some point, that's Phase B.
That's Phase B.
And that is in the proposed 6-year plan.
Got it. And who's responsible for paying for that?
That's in the city's 6-year plan for our frontage. It depends on partly some of the ownership for the area to the north, but
Similar
the southern
to,
half.
Similar to what we have here?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any other council questions? I don't see any lights on. I just want to clarify what you were saying there at the end. We're looking at pulling forward the construction contract so that we will attempt to not have to worry about pausing and resuming in the spring. So our goal right now is to hit the good weather and get the project done this season.
Yes.
Ideal situation.
Ideal situation,
Okay.
yeah.
And I would have asked ahead of time, I didn't think of it until I was looking at that map just now. That is a prime location for food trucks, vendors for different things. And I'm curious what coordination has happened with parks to ensure that we have proper power in place, both for so that food trucks aren't running generators, and so that, we have 120 power, because the power that comes off the street lights often isn't phased down for that sort of use. So have we worked with parks to determine what sort of needs they might have once that street's done?
We have been working with parks on this project, but we actually haven't worked on that topic, and it's not too late for us to touch base and see what we can do.
Okay, it'd be great if we could do that while the street's all torn up. Okay, and Councilmember, that's all I've got. Councilmember Treen's light has come on.
Yeah, how much of this is being funded by the transportation mitigation?
Just under $2 million is the.
And is that all of our money?
Is that?
Mitigation money, is that all of our mitigation money, or is that just a portion of it?
That's impact fees.
Yeah, impact fees. Is that just a portion of it,
No,
or
I
is it
don't
all
have
of
the
it?
balance off the top of my head, but we have a balance that will.
So it's a portion of it?
Portion of it.
Okay. Next is the 10-foot sidewalk. Is it required? Or is this because it's a cohesive legacy design, so the sidewalk's 10 feet?
Yeah, so the vision for town center calls for that it's eminently walkable. And it's also key to providing multimodal facilities for people to gather. So the design decision has been made to make it 10 feet.
And so if it's multimodal, are there bike lanes?
The speed will be low, so we are not installing separate bike lanes.
Can I make a suggestion then that at least make sure that the lights are not in the sidewalk? If you're going to have it multimodal and the speed limits are going to be low and it's going to be what did you just say, eminent walking facilities, can we make sure that light poles are not in the middle of my sidewalks? Or our sidewalks?
So you mean that don't make light poles to reduce sidewalk width effectively? Is that what you are saying?
Yeah, it would be that just to me seems like is inefficient for multimodal transportation.
100% agreed.
Unless you want to use it to slow people down. And you might not like the results of that. Okay, the only other real concern, and actually those were just kind of some fun ideas I had, but the overflow of the rain garden, this is my concern. I have a concern, one, on the rain gardens as a whole, but I think you answered that they'll still be there and functioning as a rain garden, except you actually made a statement then that said, overflow of the rain garden runs in the drains or into, so when it fills up on a heavy rainstorm, where does the overflow of the rain gardens go?
It flows down the slope, actually goes south.
So in its existing state right now, it flows down the hill?
Yeah, to a dispersion trench, and then from there, water dissipates into vegetated areas.
So it's not going into the system that the town center built?
No.
Okay, that's good. I mean, yay. Thanks.
Thank you. I had seen a light flash on and then off, so I just want to make sure there weren't any that wasn't unintentional. Okay. It looks like we are done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
We'll
you.
be back with hopefully some very low bids soon.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. And we are moving on to the discussion of proposed updates to the City Council's rules of procedure. This will be led by our interim city manager.
Hey, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening to you and Deputy Mayor and councilors. Yeah, the item before you is a request I have to change your meeting schedule and start times. The overall objective here is to help improve staff and council efficiency and effectiveness, improve communication, overall meeting time reduction, eliminate the second, this gets done through eliminating the second Tuesday work session, and adding a couple of 50 to 55 minute work sessions to your prior to the existing council meetings. I can just speak from my own personal experience here, 3 weeks, and 10% of my time is spent in these meetings. 20 to 25% of my time has been spent preparing for these meetings. So over a third of my time ultimately is related to these meetings and not necessarily going through and dealing with all the other work. And that is also consistent, I think, with several of your other staff, key executive staff, Rachel, Audrey, and Mark, and others that are involved. And that has a significant cost to the organization. It's an opportunity cost that ultimately, if we're here doing these things, we're not ultimately working on the other things that need to get done. I'll speak to a vacancy issue a little bit later in the mayor or the manager's report, but those are the primary things. And then also recognizing that you as well are spending an enormous amount of time here, 3 weeks consecutive each and every month versus having a break between those weeks to recharge, do other things, not be involved on a Tuesday evening. So that's the request. I understand as we're opening up the council rules of procedure, there's the ability that opens up the potential for others. My request is that we limit, this to this item as we move forward with this when we bring it back to you next week. We'll also do some cleanup so that ultimately you're not having your meeting times stated in your rules of procedure, but more in the resolution. So you're not having to open it up. If you want to make a change, it can be made a little easier through a resolution process. With respect to your rules of procedure, suggestion I would have is that becomes an annual type of thing that you do with your goal setting. That anytime during the course of the year, if you have suggestions for changes that you'd want to make to the rules of procedure, we can go ahead and put those into a docket, make those available, and have them, maybe some research done on them to present to you in your goal setting session so it becomes an efficient, effective way to move through that process. With that, be glad to address any questions that you may have.
Council, any questions? Councilmember Stewart.
Yeah, this might be a question to you, Mayor. I know we've been limiting time for each council member to speak, and I'm just wondering if we're only going to have 55 minutes for these. And first of all, I like the idea of only having 2 meetings a month, and I know that it will probably save staff a lot of time as well. But how are we going to make sure for study sessions, right, for these work sessions where we dive deep, that we do in fact have enough time to dive into the topics, or will we get other opportunities to talk with staff to make sure that all of our questions get answered. And I don't mind the 2s and 3s, but I will say that I feel like I learn, and I, sometimes have my opinion changed by the conversation. So I just want to make sure on these topics that we have to dive deep, that we actually have enough time in just 55 minutes to go there.
Yes, thank you for the question. It's an excellent question, and I think the process here is what we'll try to bring back to you are items that hopefully follow a format that give you adequate time to speak, have discussion, debate, etc. And also for us to be bringing back to you reasonable alternatives that help form the basis for your conversation. And certainly from a staff perspective, it's better to have your questions brought to us earlier in the process, where we can think about those things, bring back to you informed information so that, one, it's available and we can submit it, potentially out earlier as part of the package that we're putting together. We'll try to do a better job of, say, putting out the agenda, the items that we're ultimately trying to bring back in those work sessions. And if there's content and so forth that you're looking to have addressed, if it's presented to us, early on, that can help us as we lay out the alternatives for you to consider, together with some of the research and so forth that help inform those alternatives to be viable. I don't want to bring forward alternatives that, really aren't alternatives.
Perfect. Yeah.
Right? The other thing I would encourage you spent a lot of time on this last issue earlier tonight. Guarantee you it's not perfect. 100% no, that legislation you passed is not perfect. Going from 80% perfect to 100% perfect, you can go forever and you'll never get there. So my suggestion to you is don't seek perfect, seek something that works. Give it a chance, iterate it. If you're familiar with the 80-20 rule, settle on 80%, let it work itself out, bring back the next iteration where you get 80% of the items that you're ultimately address. At that point, you're 96% there. Give it a little bit more time, iterate off of that, you're at 99%. That's just, the whole operating of the 80-20, rule. And I think sometimes we strive to be perfect. And in this business, having done this for as long as I have, I've yet to find perfect.
Yeah.
And I've seen a lot of council spend an awful lot of time trying to get to weave this thing to be a perfect solution. It hasn't yet existed.
Yeah. With the 2 meetings a month, will we be able to potentially get the presentations before the meetings? Because I know sometimes there's really good information in the presentations and we're only seeing it for the first time when it comes on the screen. And that does make it hard for us to, I think that's why sometimes we have to go over, have things come back because we haven't had time to process it, or we see it, we process a little, and then we go home and we're like, oh shoot, I just thought of 10 more things. So I know it's hard with presentations. I think that's the one downside of the software is you can update it till the last possible second. But in the don't try to be perfect rule, if we could get something in advance so that we can have time to try to digest it and maybe think about it a bit before we come in, we may avoid some of that.
Thank you very much. And in all transparency, you had department directors working on their presentations tonight right up to literally the meeting. And that's a cultural thing that we will need to shift. And I appreciate that. And I think, we can certainly make that adjustment. Having a little bit of time here between this meeting and the meeting on the 18th, if you're agreeable to having that meeting, that will help facilitate that. And also as we drop things onto a calendar going forward, moving adjusting the dates that things are due, giving time for legal review, my review, et cetera, before it gets ultimately, onto your agenda, not having to send out revisions and updates and so forth. I think all of that will help streamline the process, make sure that we're all ultimately working from the same stuff. And we can work towards that. It may take a few times, but we can certainly make that effort and make that change.
We'll appreciate that. And anything that saves some of our staff some time, I'm certainly in favor of giving it a try because I know
Yeah, save
I know
them
they
time
are
and save you
working
time.
up to the last minute, so appreciate that.
Councilmember Lamb.
So Andy, you and I had a conversation earlier about this. One of the things that I mentioned to Andy was that I took a look at how long all our previous meetings have been since the beginning of the year, and not counting today, but out of the 20 meetings that we've had, 9 of them have been extended. So that's 45% of our meetings have gone past 10 o'clock. And averaging up till 10:30. So what I don't want happening is that we start at 5:30 for a discussion session and then go into a regular meeting, which gets out at 10:30. So that is a 5-hour meeting. And I know that meeting fatigue is going to set in. No good decisions happen at those late hours. And I understand wanting to streamline our process, make it easier on staff. So I would support this only if we could demonstrate that we can get out by 9 o'clock. Like I would entertain September and maybe part of October, seeing if we can get out at 9 o'clock. And if we can't, I don't want to be in 5-hour meetings.
Yes, thank you for that. And my suggestion to that would be to go ahead and move forward with my request, and we will have an endeavor to get done by 9 o'clock. Knowing we'll keep the time at 10 on the schedule for now, but our goal will be to get these meetings done, working with you to get the meetings done at 9, no later than 9. Part of that's going to be, and I have been tracking, each meeting, how long are we taking on each item. We'll do a better job of putting together what we believe are reasonable time points here. And from a time management standpoint, hopefully everyone can see, that how much time has been allotted to get to a 9 p.m. Now, if we look at tonight, for example, there were a couple of items that were listed. I'll give item 7. That was a 30-minute item. That was an hour and 40 minutes. I'll go back and review with staff how much of that time was actually staff versus how much of that time was you going through the discussion, the debate. How much of that could have been saved by doing the things that, Councilor Stewart is, suggesting in terms of getting the presentation, the materials and so forth earlier. I do think that we can help with that. There's going to also be looking at this and saying some of these items may just take longer, and we'll just need to table some of these items and say we're going to wrap up at 9 and move these other items to the next meeting. But I think we're going to need to work together to figure out how to get that done. And all I can do is bring this to you in a way that from a staff perspective, trying to help you help us is set this as a goal, a framework to help make it happen. I think if we kept it the way it is, I think we'd still be meeting till 10 o'clock and we'd still be, on our regular meetings, and then we'd still be, having 2+ hour work sessions on Tuesday, and we'd just continue to have churn in the office in terms of not being as effective as I would think that we could be if we had a little bit of a break to prepare a little bit better, clean things up, be a little bit more concise, make sure we had the right review and you have the information earlier.
So just to clarify, if we had the study sessions, then we would, the end time for our meetings would be 9 o'clock. Is that correct?
What I'm I think in talking with the mayor, I think the suggestion here is let's target 9. We'll keep it at 10 in terms of the publication. We'll target 9, and once we've got that dialed in and everybody's comfortable with that, we make that change to 9 p.m.
Okay. All right.
If I could speak a little bit to that, part of the meeting time management is on me, and part of what I attempt to do is understand the temperature of the dais at the time that I'm adhering to the time rules that we have for everyone in the rounds. And it's important, I think, for us to have a release valve for any frustration or to, as we're going through some of these debates. And if I cut off debate, that doesn't serve well for the public or us because it creates frustration. At the same time, it does extend our meetings and results in frustration at the end. And I can hear sighs and whatnot coming from the dais when I do make those decisions that we're done, we're cutting off debate at this point, it's time to move on. I don't enjoy doing that, but at the same time, I hear the concerns about the meetings running long. I feel it, everyone does. I know our staff do. So I would appreciate feedback from each one of you about my application of those time rules so that I can make better judgment calls up here, because there might be times where it makes sense for me to be less strict on that than others, depending upon the topic. It's challenging to make in the heat of this in some of these debates. So your feedback to me is going to be helpful in the application of those. We have Councilmember Boyer.
Yes, City Manager. So tell me a little bit about then public comment. How is that going to work?
Make sure I heard you right, Councilor Boyer. You're speaking in terms of the amount of public comment that may come?
Yeah, like just during regular session. Just during regular session. Yeah,
During the regular session, I'm not advocating for a change. I think the 3-minute time limit is important. At some point may want to have some discussion about what are we talking about up there. Hopefully the comments, are ultimately leading to some action. And I don't know the answer to that. Need to talk with you guys a little bit more. But if we're having the same feedback meeting after meeting on the same thing, do we need a response back from the organization to those particular, requests? And, we'll talk more tomorrow about that, in our exec team meeting. And then I'll also kind of visit with each of you over the next, couple of weeks to formulate, some responses or some action on our end, to those. And that may reduce some of the time that ultimately is being presented to you.
Deputy Mayor.
I'm supportive. I just would comment that I think sometimes we act like this has to be done tonight or the world's going to crash. And so I think we should be really liberal about tabling items. If it's taking too long, it obviously needs more consideration. And so we should table it, give the council a chance to study what they learned that night and come back another meeting. That way you don't have to go to 10 o'clock.
I have no other lights on the dais, so I think you're not looking for action tonight. This is going to come.
This was a discussion just to make sure, and then we'll bring it back to you for action at the next meeting.
Okay, perfect. Well, in an attempt, yes.
How are we going to communicate this out to the community? Because I do think, having an earlier start time and again, totally supportive of it, but it is a big change. I think we've had this 3 meetings a month thing for at least a decade. So I want to make sure we do a really great job of communicating it out to the community and how public comment may be different for the study sessions and stuff, just so people don't feel like we're targeting them or that we're trying to do anything less transparent, that
Sure.
we're trying to do this for efficiency. So
That's a great question, and let us talk tomorrow,
Yep.
when also with the comms team and come back with something that would be part of the package. I think before you adopt this, we could probably start sending some of that communication out so that the public is aware of that before you act on it, should they want to make comment, at the next meeting.
yeah, I just want to make sure people know, right? And the earlier start time, and maybe reminding people that it's recorded, right? So if they can't get here by 5:30, that they can still watch it later. And then the other part might be, don't give me a dirty look, but if we can get the recordings up, as quickly as possible. I know you already do, but the next day. You do a great job. But just, I think that's really important, right, is that a lot of people aren't going to be able to get here by 5:30.
Right. Yeah, one of the other considerations as we're talking through that is, and we've talked a little bit about it, and I understand it's something that's been done in the past and worked, is getting all of us off the dais and onto some tables where we're more in a work session format, being able to tear those tables down before the meeting. So we're going to need to kind of wrap it up at 50, 55 minutes max. I understand it takes at least 2-3 minutes to kind of do the tear down.
Totally. Yeah.
Okay.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. With that, we have 7 minutes left and council reports to go through. So I'll move down to today's Councilmember O'Farrell.
Thank you, Mayor. Just two things. Myself and Councilmember Treen attended the RIA 8 meeting on the 17th. I was online. Councilmember Treen was able to attend in person. We did approve our budget. Very minimal increases, like a 3.6 increase. So it amounts to an extra $1,000 from our standpoint with RIA 8, which was great. And one last thing that they were doing, we approved funding. They were approached by Ballard Locks to run a pilot program because of the increased temperature of the water in the Ballard Locks. They are going to run a pilot project where they're going to have a submersible pump that's going to go into the lock to pump in cooler water to see if that helps with the survival of fish in that area. So we'll see how that works out. And then tomorrow I will be attending online. It's called Build Here Puget Sound. It's PSRC. They're going to do the launch of that tool, where they received that grant from Amazon. And it's and to quote them, it's a regional housing data and policy platform that brings together zoning data, developable land inventory, feasibility analysis, and parcel level housing projections across King, Kitsap, Pierce, and Snohomish counties. And they're going to do a live demonstration of the tool online tomorrow. So if you can attend, you should. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Lamb.
I have 2 meetings on Thursday. One is the Puget Sound Regional Council Executive Board, and I sent out the agenda for that. I also have a meeting in the evening for Arch electeds, and I believe the Deputy Mayor will be sending that out. I just wanted to remind everybody that we have 2 surveys out. The city does. One is for fiscal sustainability that is due on the 31st, and then there is also a solid waste survey, which I filled out. I don't know if anybody else did, but if anybody's listening, there is a solid waste survey that is equally as important. I hope you guys fill it out. Thanks.
Councilmember Stewart.
Yeah, I attended the Regional Transportation Council and the GMPB, the Growth Management Policy Board meetings last week. I shared the agendas out. There wasn't anything huge other than we did get a preview of Metro's next stop and planning for future investments. And so there is a way to provide some feedback on that. They're looking at some of the criteria on how they determine where to provide additional transit. So it isn't just the light rail, but all the transit. And then in the growth management policy board meeting, we talked about the updating the criteria for growth centers and exceptions to growth centers, and how we can get more focused on outcomes as opposed to criteria up front, so that those existing centers, if they're performing, can continue to perform even if they maybe don't meet some of the shape or size criteria, right, as long as they're meeting the performance criteria. So those were the big ones, and I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Boyer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I'll be attending the AWC Municipal Budgeting and Fiscal Management Workshop August 5th and 6th. That should be super fun, and I will let you guys know how that goes.
Thank you. I am part of the Finance and Administrative Committee with EFR. If you have questions about the budget, I'll be sending more information out. We're now doing deep dives into more of the line item elements, and it's a fairly large ask from them that's going to be worked through with all of our partners. If you have questions, I'd be happy to walk through their thought process as best as I can, so you're not surprised when you see the numbers. Deputy Mayor.
I'm going to join that build here. Puget Sound signed up for that. There's a summer social tomorrow night for the Sound Cities Association that I'm going to attend, and then the Arch meeting on Thursday night. And we're also, 3 of us are working on the Waselli training, which is going to be continuing next week.
Councilmember Treen.
Yeah, the social, and that's it. Thanks.
Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Real quick, I don't know if we've got the presentation available for the heat and smoke update and the air quality. I've sent, I think, all that information to you in terms of what we've ultimately been able, and I'll just, okay, thanks. And I may just pass on that real quick to get done by 10. I want to thank you all for the last 2 weeks, been able to meet with you, several times and get familiar with the issues that you each have, as well as, the city itself and also with the department heads. The next couple of weeks going to be kind of diving in a little bit more, really trying to fine tune what are the 6 to 8 issues that we ultimately bring back for you and, fiscal sustainability, component, in the August meeting. Wanted to make sure everyone got the photo album. Did send digitally of all the staff and their positions so that you've got that, as a reference tool. If you did not get that, I'll make sure that Debbie sends it. I think, anyway, I'll follow up with that. I thought that was something that was getting done. So good to see that. One thing I'm going to add to your agendas, saw it on the PRSC agenda, is a schedule of all the, and that was my hand, sorry. A schedule of the vacant positions, the status of those positions for the organization. Something you've heard from staff regularly is they're impacted with what's going on staffing-wise. There's 18 vacant positions right now. That's more than 10% of your organization. And that is definitely having an impact. And I want to report that back to you. And we won't, talk too much about it initially, but as we get into the budget, you'll see some of the conversations that we're ultimately having on that. Okay.
Okay.
That concludes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And with that, a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
Seconded. Discussion. None. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed. Motion carries 7-0. We are adjourned.
That's the only reason why we made it. Okay. Perfect. That's why we should have tabled in the day. Okay, so to travel to the social at the Wilderness Park is at least an hour drive at 4 o'clock. So
Done with you. I want to be done with you, Ken.
yeah, well, I don't blame you. I would want to be done with me too.